The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Yo, what up? This is Rocky Asuka Romero of Chaos, and you are listening to Keepin' It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the ace of podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the ace of podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out and bury all the frauds. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, we will review Wrestling Satsuma No Kuni, preview Wrestling Dontaku, and cover all its news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Please support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping a Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get all the network's podcasts over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/social suplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Young boy, how you doing, man?
Been better, but we're here. We're getting it done. Here's the thing, Jeremy. I'm not having the greatest week ever, and unfortunately, as the listeners know, I'm the beacon of positivity when it comes to Keeping It Strong Style, and I'm just hoping that I can muster the willpower to keep that level of positivity up to counteract the amount of negativity that you bring to the show.
Some would say that you are the proclivity for positivity.
Yeah, I'm the proclivity for positivity for Keeping It Strong Style. Yeah. I was reminded, we call ourselves the ace of podcasts. I saw that what's his name? Who's the guy from
Russo?
Yeah, Vince Russo. He called himself the king of podcasts. I'm like, what kind of jackass would call themselves something so grandiose as that without the track record to back it up? I mean, who would ever do anything like that?
Right. I mean, what has he ever done?
Who'd he ever beat?
Oh, man. Well, speaking of being the ace of podcasts, we're going to, up our game to the next level here. Going to make the official announcement. So we've kind of briefly talked about it. I think we mentioned it on the show last week, but we are officially launching our Keeping It Strong Style Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/KI Strong Style, just like our Twitter handle, KI Strong Style, patreon.com/KI Strong Style. That's where you can get in on the Patreon. We currently have 3 tiers. So you're going to have the Young Lion tier, which is $1 a month. That's if, you want to support the show, but you don't really care about the extra content. You just want to throw us a buck. Boom. You're Young Lion. You wear the black trunks. Give us $1 a month. All gravy. But if you want,
you do nothing but jobs. Okay. You get 1 drop kick and 1 hope spot, but you're going to lose to either a secondary finisher or a Boston Crab, one or the other. That's pretty much that's where you're slotted when you give us $1.
And then next up from that, we have the grade 1 tier, which is $5 a month. So with the grade 1 tier, you're going to get the show ad free. We have been making some money off the ads on the show, and I know ads can be annoying. It can interrupt the flow of the show. Well, you get on the grade 1 tier, you're going to get the show ad free every week. Also, you'll get access to any bonus audio content we do. Josh has a lot of those Tamashi reviews, all of our, year end like award stuff that's normally bonus will be behind there. Any extra interviews that we do, any extra audio we do will be on that grade 1 $5 tier. And then the last but not least, the tier that you're definitely going to want to be on is the IWGP tier. That is $10 a month. So that's how you're going to get this show live weekly, the weekly video stream. Every week you'll get the stream. Every Monday night you can watch along the show live, or you can watch the replay of the video. And then, of course, you'll still get access to ad-free audio version and access to any bonus audio, and any bonus video we do will be on that $10 IWGP tier.
Yeah, this opens up an entire world of possibilities for different kind of content creations and, just ways to interact with you guys and offering up different, things to consume when it comes to content. We all know how everybody loves their content. Yeah. But no, for real, it's going to be really awesome to kind of have you guys in the stream and to kind of experience the show in real time, unfiltered, completely uncut. You're going to see when my dog jumps in my lap and when I go to the bathroom, and when Jeremy rarely messes up, but whenever that might occur, you're going to see it all. So it's exciting, and we're glad to have you guys on for the ride. And another thing too, not only are you getting back from the show, but everything that you put into the show is going towards the show to grow the show, to make it better, to increase, what we're doing here, which is trying to be the ace of podcasts, which we definitely are.
Yeah. This is the first time venture for us. Obviously, I think, we might add stuff, change stuff. We'll definitely open to feedback. So this is going to be a journey that we're going to be on. We want you guys to be on there with us. Let us know how we can improve the tiers as we move forward, and we'll be making tweaks as we go along. But yeah, excited to get this kicked off.
Yeah. So you don't want to miss out. You want to jump on early. You want to get in on the ground floor and be a part of, I don't know what would we call the people keeping it strong stylers?
I don't know, the Kiss listeners, the Kiss fans,
the kissers.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll be one of the kissers.
And last note about video. So I know last week you were mentioning about trouble growing out the beard. Listener of the show, Barry Walsh, he said, Josh, you need to go full beard. So I just saw both of you for the first time online. He said, when I grew mine some years back, it was a bit patchy, but it fills in if you leave it alone. And Barry sent a picture of his beard. I'll have to send it to you. This man, he's got this thick Eric Rowan red beard.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going. But I was living with Jeremy a few years back, I think, and I tried to grow it out. It didn't look the best.
You weren't patient, man. You gotta
give it some more time.
Yeah.
Some more TLC. So we'll get there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into this New Japan. We got to cover. Got some.
We got to cover. I guess we're gonna have to talk about New Japan. I guess
that's what the people came here for. New Japan coverage. The people, they don't want to watch a Road 2 show, so we watch them for them.
Sometimes.
So we'll start off with April 23rd, Cork and Hall, and we'll kind of run through the results here. If anything important happened, we'll kind of go from there. But this Road 2 did actually kind of start with something important. That we did a little angle here. We had a contract signing for the IWGP Junior title between Sho and Doki, and this all broke down into House of Torture forcing Doki to sign a non-title match contract.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, Doki was, he was going back and forth with Sho, and there were different people from House of Torture in the ring, including Dick Togo, and through a means of distraction, they were able to kind of switch out the contracts to one that had been doctored by Sho and his cohorts for to say non-IWGP and non-title. And so he signed it, they signed it, and then, they kind of duped Doki into unbeknownstly signing a non-title match.
Yeah, they swindled this man. They grifted him, and the contracts that he had, not IWGP Junior title match.
As funny as all this was, I don't know. I don't know, Jeremy. This is just not my New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, when I think about the kind of stuff that I enjoy from this company, don't get me wrong. I'm all for a good in-ring segment when it happens. And it's not that this was a terrible in-ring segment. It just was kind of a nothing burger. And it's sort of just shtick and comedy for comedy's sake. And I'm like, how does this benefit the story, if you will? Because it's like, this is the main event of Satsuma no Kuni. And does this entice me to want to watch the match more now that it might potentially be a non-IWGP? And also, why are we taking up, it's obviously it's not television, so it's not like there's not the discourse about like television time, but it's still minutes of my day that I have to like sit there and I'm like, this is New Japan, huh? Like, this is Shinneon. This is where we're at right
King
now.
of sports.
This is the king of sports, right? Like, I don't know, bro. It's not what I came up on.
Yeah. It's what it is. You kind of expect the shenanigans now from Show, and it's all about his quote unquote character work. And
should we though?
Should we care about it?
No, you said like you come to expect this at this point, and I'm like, should we? Like, should we just be expecting this from New Japan? Like, is this what we're settling for now? Is non-IWGP weird ass skits at the beginning of like, I don't know, like, what the fuck are we doing?
When it comes to House of Torture, it is what it is. I'm not surprised at this point anymore. But yeah, that's how this Road 2 kicked off, and then we led into the first match where we had Chase Owens, Kenta, and Taiji Ishimori defeating Bishamon and Shoma Kato 8 minutes and 28 seconds. So this was just a preview for the upcoming IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team title match coming up on Wrestling Dontaku. Then following that, we had the TMDK team of Kosei Vegeta, Mikey Nichols, Shane Hayes, and Zack Sabre Jr. They defeated ELP, Hikuleo, Desperado, and Katsuya Morishima 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Preview here for the strong openweight tag team title match, and a little bit of a Super Junior preview with Vegeta and Despy. Then we had the never openweight 6-man tag team title match. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Bolton Oleg, and Toru Yano defeat the House of Torture team of Evil, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Yujiro Takahashi 12 minutes and 54 seconds.
Yeah. So we have a retention of the never title, and I don't know, this kind of seemed to me like basically a rehash of the same match that we just saw recently in where were they?
Taiwan.
Yeah, I see. I was gonna say Taiwan, but I didn't want to say the incorrect place and mess myself up. But yeah, the match from Taiwan from Wrestling World, this match wasn't so different from that one, honestly.
Yeah, I think the big question here was, Bolton Oleg going to retain here as a young lion champion, or were they going to do a kind of quick hot potato, get the belt off of him real quick? But yeah, they end up retaining. Towards the end, he hits that barrel roll, which he's calling the kamikaze, which allowed Tanahashi to hit one of the worst looking high fly flows ever.
Yeah, it was really, really, really bad.
All I can think was my dad is a heel wrestler.
Why? Because in My Dad is a Heel Wrestler, he hit a perfect 5-star frog splash. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
But that man was breaking down the movie.
Yeah, he was. Like, it's kind of prophetic a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, hits that, and on Yujiro 1, 2, 3, and they retain the championship. So Bolton Oleg continues his title run here as a young lion.
You notice Tanahashi, ever since he became president, he's been winning a lot.
Yeah, and always in a title picture.
Yeah.
He's in the TV title picture. Now he's in the Never Six Man. He has a global title match coming up.
Yep. I did think that we were kind of questioning whether or not going into this match, we would perhaps see Bolton Oleg pick up the win here. Maybe like if that had been the narrative that was playing out here, and it didn't really seem to be that way, even though he was, instrumental in the victory. Ultimately, it did come down to Tanahashi standing tall at the end.
Yeah. So then following that, we had the Bull Club War Dogs versus Los Ingobernables de Japón best of 5 series. So series started out with the Gene Blast, Yota Tsuji defeating Gato in 5 seconds. This was absolutely hysterical. Gato tried hitting Tsuji with the brass knuckles. Tsuji hits a big Gene Blast all before the bell. They ring the bell. He pins Gato. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think from first contact, this was actually probably like an 11-second affair, but from the bell to bell, from the moment the bell actually rang to the pinfall was 5 seconds. And if you're counting, the 3 count itself, that's 3 of the 5 seconds. So basically just speared this man and got him out of there, which was pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Then following that, the next up was Gabe Kidd, and he defeated Bushi 9 minutes and 22 seconds.
Yeah, this was fine. A lot of brawling on the outside. Once they got inside, Bushi sprayed the mist. There was a referee bump. A lot of close near falls for Bushi, but ultimately Gabe Kidd was too much man for Bushi. Dropped this man on his dome and got him out of there.
Yeah, did that kind of that kneeled, I don't know what he calls it, where he gets the one leg, kind of a fisherman pile driver, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, I don't know what the official name of it is, but I like it.
Yeah, Bushi tried all shenanigans. He tried spraying the mist, but that did not help him get the advantage. Kidd hits that pile driver, and then we're evened up 1-1 in the best of 5. So out next from the War Dogs, we had Clark Connors, and from LIJ, we had Shingo Takagi, and Shingo ends up defeating Clark Connors 10 minutes and 54 seconds.
Yeah, hard fought victory for Shingo. Clark Connors had a good accounting of himself. Very stiff, lots of headbutts, forearms. Connors hit the pounce at one point, which was pretty cool. Good action. And even though like Connors is technically still a junior, he's probably not that far off size from Shingo. So I didn't think he looked really out of place here. And I could even see him being somebody in that never title picture scene sooner rather than later. But, ultimately Shingo picks up the win here, which was kind of interesting because last week, me and Jeremy, we didn't do the greatest job when it came to predictions here because we were sort of guessing like match 1, match 3, and match 1, match 4, and match 5 were like completely sealed up, and it was going to be these 2 matches that might potentially have a tinge of shenanigans, maybe a Paul Heyman special, and it didn't really come out that way. And so once I saw that they went chalk here and Shingo picked up the victory, I was kind of questioning like, what's about to happen in the next 2 matches?
Right, because clearly they're not going to have, them win up the series before the last match was over. So clearly, normally these things always work out. They go even, they end up going 2-2 to the last matchup. And so clearly they were going to do that. But when you look at the remaining matches, it was like, all right, we have Drilla Maloney and Naito, and then Dave Finlay and Hiromu. And it kind of seemed like, well, Naito's going to beat Drilla, and so it's going to end up being 3-2 before they even get to the main event.
Yeah, even though this match was good, one thing too that I thought was just a little bit noteworthy is Shingo still was able to get rid of Clark Connors with Made in Japan with a Pumping Bomber, as opposed to needing to bust out the Last of the Dragon or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's still kind of showing that clear line of, all right, he's still a junior, so just kind of use a secondary finisher there. Nailed him with that Pumping Bomber. 1, 2, 3, got the win. And then following that, we had Drilla Maloney defeating Tetsuya Naito 10 minutes and 7 seconds. And this is where we had the shenanigans. We had Jake Lee from Pro Wrestling Noah, from the Good Looking Guys. He comes out and causes a distraction here, takes out Naito, which allows Drilla to hit that Drilla Killer pile driver, crush Naito with it. 1, 2, 3. Big Drilla Maloney gets a big upset win here.
Yeah, this was again, I was kind of just guessing going into this, like, are we about to see something that we weren't expecting last week? We knew that there'd been the kind of like hinting from David Finlay that there was somebody getting ready to join the War Dogs, somebody that had an issue with Naito, and somebody from the outside, and who could that be? And we did a fair bit of speculating, but I didn't connect the pieces and realize that it was going to happen here in this moment. And maybe I should have. And it's always like that with us. Like we're always trying to be ahead and kind of guess when an angle might get inserted, and then it's looking at us right in the face and we just completely gloss over it. But Drill Maloney, they talk about how he has to cut weight to make 220 and he's just under the limit and everything. Bro, he looked about the same size as Naito in this match, honestly.
Yeah, this man was jacked to the gills. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a heavyweight run for him in the near future. But yeah, he did not look out of place in the ring with Naito at all. Yeah,
like not at all. And I don't want to say like he looked better than Naito necessarily, because I don't know if, in a 10-minute match he was given too much opportunity to go out there and put on a banger or shine or anything like that. But of the two, he looked the more fresh of the two for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, end of the match here. Jake Lee had his foot over Naito, and we heard rumors of Finlay saying, somebody was coming in, they wanted Naito's head, and so Jake Lee's talking about, and then we got the kind of Heyman special here where Hiromu runs out to make the save to get Jake Lee off of Naito, which then brought Finlay out to start the main event, which ended up being Dave Finlay defeating Hiromu Takahashi 18 minutes and 1 second.
Yeah, and if you count the pre-match, there's probably another like 2 minutes of schmaz that went on there. So about a 20-minute affair, easily the best match of the evening in the 5-match series, which I kind of anticipated that it would be, just given who was in it. But a very good showing for Hiromu, but once again, he eats a loss here, continuing a story of him being on a downslide and him being in the middle of a losing streak, essentially.
Yeah, Finlay was able to hit that cross strike knee, that new finisher he's been doing recently, to get the pin on Hiromu. And, we've been talking about for weeks now, what's something they could do with Hiromu to freshen him up, give him a heavyweight run. I'm like, he looked fine to me here in this main event against Finlay, didn't look out of place, went toe-to-toe with him, and I really think that they should still consider capitalizing on his star power as a heavyweight.
Yeah. All in all, though, I thought this was a pretty good show. We got a title match. We got the surprise with Jake Lee, the 5-on-5 LIJ versus War Dogs. One thing I don't think we can overstress enough is how Bolton Oleg is basically carrying the 6-man titles by himself. Yano's getting no offense, and Tanahashi is barely moving around. So it's like he's a one-man wrecking crew there. There are a lot of questions coming out of the show. We had talked last week, the night preceding this had been Monday, so we recorded after that, and it had been a somewhat disappointing attendance. And then we were kind of guessing, well, tomorrow's attendance, which would have been Tuesday, the day of this show, that it was a much more enticing on paper event. So maybe the attendance was going to spike up a little bit based off that. Like, that didn't happen, nope. Which is not necessarily a great sign, especially for Finlay and the War Dogs, I would say in particular, because you're getting 5 singles matches with LIJ, and it's hard to kind of put the blame on LIJ given their track record. But you do wonder if this Jake Lee thing is going to put a shot of excitement into the arm or into the vein of New Japan. I know that he hasn't necessarily set the world on fire in All Japan and in Noah, but crossovers like this, they're very exciting. They appeal. The reaction from the crowd was like pretty incredible.
Yeah, he got a really big reaction, and we'll talk more about Jake Lee because he ends up replacing Gato in one of the elimination matches. But yeah, big reaction, and yeah, hopefully that does kind of bring some intrigue, and that also builds into the All Together show that will be coming up on May 6th. So the next Road 2 show happened on April 27th from Hiroshima Sun Plaza. We had a pre-show match here in the Frontier Zone. We had Bolton Oleg and Toru Yano defeating Hanzo and Ray Paloma 6 minutes and 54 seconds. Oleg once again picking up the win with the Kamikaze. Fine matchup here. Hanzo looked cool.
Hanzo, I forget when it was, but I think he did a Super Juniors like back in I want to say the 90s.
Really?
I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure like he worked for New Japan like almost 30 years ago.
Wow. I didn't realize he was that old.
Yeah, I'd have to look again and kind of see, but like I remember he has ties to New Japan from like way back in the day.
Gotcha. Once again, very interesting here that Bolton Oleg's the one picking up the win, and he's been picking up the win in a lot of these Frontier Zone matches that he's in. He's a champion, so I think everybody's still asking, what's next? Is he going to go on an excursion, or is he going to, pull a Toa Hanare or a Kevin Knight and just kind of graduate in the middle of a tour? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's hard to say, honestly, because when I look at the guy, he has all the potential in the world, right? In some ways, I think of like early Brock Lesnar. I think of early Kurt Angle, somebody with this incredible pedigree, this incredible look when it comes to their skills, but obviously has kind of been thrown in the deep end and is, I'm not saying that he's drowning whatsoever, but clearly not the strongest swimmer all the same. But those two guys in particular were able to grow at an exceedingly fast rate and really pick up their game and learn from some of the best. And that's what it took for both of them. It took those two guys being put in there with your Triple H's and your Undertakers and The Rock and Stone Cold and blah, 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 and so far we haven't really seen that with Oleg Bolton. He hasn't been given that opportunity, and he is just now starting to, be considered a graduate from the No Gay Dojo. And I don't know. I do think some form of excursion might benefit him. But to me, I don't know, man. He comes off as somebody that's special, if I'm being honest. I wonder if you don't, like, if you were to send that guy out, that you don't try to treat him like a great Muda, somebody that is highly protected, given an incredible gimmick, and, basically put in a prominent position wherever it is that they send him. And then that way he comes back with a boost and is already treated like a star before he ever comes back, that's pretty rare. They don't normally do that, but we are in unprecedented times. My fear is that they're going to go more like the Toa Hanare route. Obviously, he's not being booked like Toa Hanare, but, Hanare wasn't for years, was graduated, but just kind of Toa Hanare, just like a guy that was under most of the people that were above him and just slightly above the Young Lions, and wasn't moved into a prominent position for years. And even now, after joining United Empire, it's taken years until like just recently, the last couple of years, for him to kind of even be treated seriously. And I'm wondering if they have the creative vision and the faith in him to put him in the deep end. I think the question is going to be, what does his G1 look like?
Yeah. Toa Hanare essentially was just a young lion with brown tights instead of black tights.
For a long time.
Yeah, and I don't think they should do that to Oleg, but like you mentioned, that they're not booking him like that. And I don't know if an excursion's necessarily needed for him. I mean, you break down like the Bret Hart wrestler scale. Like, this guy has an amazing look. He speaks the language, so he can have some good mic work. He has that it factor. The one thing that is kind of his weakness is the work, which is getting better, but he does have some strengths in the work. Superpower, that the gut wrench delay thing he does, all his suplexes, like, you can hide some of his weaknesses and emphasize on what he does really well. And I think you have a star in the making here. Unique look, again, speaks the language. He's a no-brainer main eventer to me, and I think he's somebody that you kind of just flip the switch with and go with him.
But we're in a strange time right now, Jeremy, where it's like, just looking at the scale, or like the state, I don't know why I said scale, the state of New Japan, where it's like, okay, who are the big stars and who are the big draws that we have? And it's Naito, it's Tanahashi, Hiromu, Desperado. And that's, am I missing anybody?
Would you say Saber?
Yeah, I guess Zach. Yeah, Zach's probably the highest ranked foreign wrestler, and and then beyond that, you could start getting into like your Shingos and guys like that. But based on their booking, they haven't treated him like a main eventer in a very, very long time. Realistically, the only like true top guys they have are like, really, it's Hiromu, Naito, and Tanahashi. And then you've got this whole host of young guys that we've been talking about for years now. And a few years ago, it was like, man, it's going to be so incredible when we get Uemura and Tsuji and,
Narita.
Shooter and Narita and all these guys come back. And then the LA dojo guys like Gabe Kidd. And now we've had them for over a year now, and we're still waiting for them to pull the trigger on some of them. And at the same time, you've got Oleg Boltin, kind of like, he's sort of a guy that, like, I don't know, you could run the risk of turning him into a Nakanishi if you don't push him the right way. And you don't want to put him in that box, like just the powerful, strong man who, can get big wins and is credible, but isn't like a true top star. But in order for them to get him to a main event level, he kind of has to jump over all those guys that I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And what's hurting him is, who is he going to work with to learn from? Now, New Japan doesn't lack for talent. They've got all the talent in the world, and we've talked about, when you talk about like passing of the torch type moments, credibility builders, where he would be working with the tip top stars, the way that Gato has booked and the way that, New Japan has been pillaged over the past years, they're lacking in having people that have the ability to pass the buck over to somebody else, which is kind of the reason right now that I think Jon Moxley is carrying the title, because they don't have a guy that's healthy enough to have a long, lengthy, successful title reign at that level and to draw.
Yeah, and then you don't have a top guy that's willing to, work with these young guys and put them over and give them that rub. So now you're left with Jon Moxley, who also, it looks like he wants to work with these young guys. He's facing Narita, he's facing Umino. Who knows who he's going to face next? But yeah, they are in this kind of weird holding pattern, because we've been saying for weeks now they fail to prepare for the future. And, we have all these guys, and we don't need another A block scenario where they're only beating each other. Like, they need to be able to beat somebody, but there's not many somebodies for them to beat.
I think in hindsight, as time has gone on, when we look back at the year of 2023 and we look at how that G1 block was handled, and we see how Okada was handled. I think that is a very pivotal and potentially disastrous decision that they made. And, and it's not a positive, but there were a lot of people that were negative on that entire thing at the time. And I think we were kind of more in the camp where we tried to stay as positive about the potential outcomes that might have been played out through that entire A block scenario and everything. And as time's gone on, it's just proved to be more and more disastrous because all of those guys basically went 50-50. Nobody got over. Okada didn't put anybody over. He didn't work with these guys, and now he's gone. And that opportunity to have that passing of the torch with just one of them, just somebody, it's not there anymore.
Yeah. And again, like you mentioned, we're kind of left with Naito, who's not 100%, and we don't even know if he wants to pass the torch to any of these guys.
Yeah. I don't try to have this discussion to be a doomsayer or anything like that. But when you start trying to project, well, how are they going to get a guy like Oleg Boltin over? Where is he going? How is an excursion going to be handled? You start looking at what the raw talent they have in it. And then the question starts coming up. Like, you have to look at the track record the last few years. And it's like, do I trust Gedo to get this guy ready and to get him over and to push him and to have all the pieces in play to have them all work together? And at this point, no, I don't have that confidence. And so when you start talking about him, it's almost impossible to have that discussion without also talking about, well, what's our main event scene look like? What's the other generation in front of him look like? Like, what's going on here? And it becomes a bigger discussion than just the raw talent and ability of Oleg Boltin.
Right. Yeah. I feel like you start with him, that opens the door to talk about everything else and how the whole roster and the layout, the main event scene, mid-card scene, all these foreigners that are kind of, hijacking New Japan and having all these needs like Riddle and Nemeth and Mustafa Ali. It opens a lot of doors for questions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So after that match, main show opened up. We had Chase, Kenta, and Taiji Ishimori defeating Bishamon and Tiger Mask. Again, another preview match for the heavyweight tag team title match. And then
Tiger Mask, geek.
Ishimori again on the winning side of things going into Super Juniors. Then after that, we had Francisco Akira and Jeff Cobb defeating the TMDK team of Kosei Fujita and Zack Sabre Jr. This was a preview for the TV title match coming up between Cobb and Sabre, and also another Super Juniors preview with Akira and Kosei Fujita. Then following that, we had Desperado, Shota Umino, and Tomohiro Ishii defeating the House of Torture team of Evil, Ren Narita, and Yujiro Takahashi. So trying to heat some things up here with Umino and Narita, as they are the next two title challengers. And I think that was pretty much it there for that matchup. And then we had Hiroshi Tanahashi and Katsuya Murashima defeating Shoma Kato and Tomioka Hanma. Also, this was more about the Young Lions, Morishima and Kato, and them and their quests and their rivalry of trying to one-up each other. Then following that, we had Sho and Kanemaru defeating the Just Five Guys team of Doki and Taka Michinoku in 4 minutes and 39 seconds. And I believe this was the match where post-match Doki and Taka, they attacked Sho and were able to get him to force him to sign the actual IWGP title contract.
Which at that point, it's like, okay, cool. We're getting the title match, which when we did I always say we, I don't know why, I don't work for New Japan, but when they did that angle, no part of me believed for even a second that we were actually not going to get the title match at Satsuma no Kuni, but it just made me think, like, is this entertaining? Are people reacting to this? Is this great character work? Is this, quote unquote story? Is this cinema? And to me, it just wasn't. It's not what I've really ever enjoyed out of this product. And then for them to turn around. And I don't know, maybe there is an audience and things change with the times, but like, I don't know, give me tough dudes beating each other up. Like, I don't need this weird shenanigans, I don't know.
We have a question here from Rice's. Wouldn't the physical violence used to force Show to sign the contract for the title match immediately nullify said contract because it was signed under duress? Also, ripping up a contract does not invalidate that contract. Can Show use this to retain his title even in the event of a loss, because legally this is not a IWGP Junior Heavyweight title match?
I don't know, man. This is not a legal. This is not a law podcast. I don't know the legalities, especially when it comes to Japanese law, and the upholding of contracts. I don't know if what they did on night one is legal at all, because they were supposed to have been signing, a title contract, and then he signed it under false pretenses. I don't know. Maybe that's illegal. I can't tell.
Yeah, Show doctored the contract. There's got to be something, legal about that, right?
I don't know. Maybe there's not. That's the thing. Where this is not. It's not we don't do that.
Well, after that,
if you guys get into legal trouble, do not reach out to me or Jeremy. Benefit you.
Yeah, this is not
you would.
Yeah, this is not where you go for legal advice. So following that, we had the NJPW Strong Openweight Tag Team title match. The champions TMDK, Mikey Nichols and Shane Hayes, they retain and defeat Guerrillas of Destiny, El Phantasmo and Hikuleo, 19 minutes and 46 seconds.
Very good match. I don't know if I'd call it like a great match, but it was very good for what it was. I think the big story coming out of it, though, is there's seemingly cracks and rifts within the partnership of the new GOD.
Yeah, toward in this matchup, ELP, a lot of the heat was on him. Hayes and Nichols were doing kind of 2-on-1 on him, and then they got the hot tag to Hikuleo. He was running wild, and then they hit their combo with the Godsend and the splash, and then it seemed like that was going to be it. They were going to retain, and they kind of pulled the FTR DIY spot where they pushed Hikuleo into ELP and to break the pin up, and then that kind of left.
The Bucks do that in almost every big match as well.
Yeah, a lot of teams do it now, but I feel like maybe other teams did it first, but like I feel like DIY and FTR were like one of the first like really big teams to do that.
I always think of the Bucks because they've been doing it for forever, and I'm like, oh, here it comes, the push.
So yeah, that happened here towards the end, and then there was some miscommunication between ELP and Hikuleo, and Nichols rolled up Hikuleo 1, 2, 3. They retained the titles, and then there was seemed to be some post-match heat between Hikuleo and ELP. Hikuleo very disappointed.
Yeah, well, it's hard when you're Hikuleo and you're living in the shadow of a great man. And that great man, I'm not talking about his father. I'm not talking about, Haku. I'm talking about Tama Tonga, now one of the biggest stars in all of WWE,
Bloodline.
According to Kevin Kelly. It's amazing how many different what's it called? How many different like Twitter profiles are out there like with the exact same verbiage talking about how Okada's just a guy in AEW, but mid-Carter Tama Tonga is one of the biggest stars in all of WWE right now. And I have to imagine that the weight of trying to live up to the name GOD and all that comes with it, and the success of Tama Tonga, the heater for the other Samoan guy, I forget his name.
Wow, I'm blanking on his name too. Solo Sikoa.
Solo Sikoa, the guy that beat John Cena in Saudi and then went on a massive losing streak for forever. It's gotta be hard. So.
We did have a question here from Barry Walsh. He says, I read yesterday ELP was out of contract in January. Do Do you think he would get lost in the mix if he went to WWE or AEW? And how high do you see his ceiling in New Japan? Personally, I think the fans love him. He's almost like CSJ, where he can beat anyone on any night, but might be more likely as a secondary title holder unless they finally pull the trigger on Zach.
You know, it's hard to kind of speak on what he needs to do and what the company needs to do at this point, because given the state of the economy, given the changing landscape of Bushiroad's business and everything, I can't tell you whether they need to cut bait with this guy or invest in him, to be honest with you. And I don't know what kind of offers are on the table for Hikuleo at this current time. You know, there's no denying. We've been fans of Hikuleo. Guys got a lot of gifts physically and very talented. And I think that sometimes he gets a bit of a bad rap for whatever reason when it comes to his work, and not always undeservedly so. This tag team has helped quite a bit, but the one thing he's kind of failed to do up to this point, and maybe that's his fault, maybe it's not, I couldn't say, it might just be bad booking. He's kind of failed to really make his mark in Japan. And what I mean by that is oftentimes the kind of guys that AEW and WWE are going to look to snatch up and sign are those people who've had a great deal of success in Japan. They've won world titles. They've had these illustrious runs. They've been main eventers. And then, you know, they can kind of parlay that success into whatever they want to do with them in the States. And thus far, the biggest success you could probably give him is the tag run, the GOD 2.0. He held the Never title very briefly. He did oust Jay White from the company, and he went far in a block in the G1, but none of those things really scream like superstar. So if they did sign him, it would, to me, be based off of they see something in his raw potential, they want to build off of it, or, you know, in the case of like WWE, it might even be like, hey, we can sign another one of Haku's sons. There's marketability here with the storyline, with continuing the never-ending bloodline scenario. And if that's what he winds up doing, you know, all the better for him. I'm sure there's a reason why he's not, if and we don't even have this verified, but it's believed that he's not signed. I'm sure there's a reason, if he's not signed, why that is. And I don't know if that's because the money offer's been too low or he has aspirations to go elsewhere. I couldn't tell you at this current time, but I think I just, me personally, I do think that there's a ceiling in New Japan for Hikuleo. I don't see him as being like an IWGP contender. And when I kind of look at how many other young generation guys they have to build and push, I just don't see him at the top of that list.
Yeah, which was kind of what left us puzzled last year, where they gave him that G1 push, and why they had him beat Jay White. Because I think there is more to invest in with guys like Shota Umino and Yota Tsuji and Ren Narita. And then you have Hikuleo, like we said, like he's been good, but yeah, he's not a guy I think you want to, you know, give that G1 run to, have him be the guy that ousts Jay White, one of your top foreign stars, you know, former champion, out of the company, and have no follow-up. Like, why wasn't he in New Japan Cup? And I know a lot of that's not on him, that's a lot on the booking, but if you were going to have him beat Jay White, then yeah, you would think the next, he would have been in New Japan Cup and maybe run far there and then be challenging for more titles. You know, he had that quick, strong title run against Kenta and kind of dropped the belt back immediately. So there's just been a lot of questionable booking, along with him not really performing to, you know, these super high heights that you would want from a New Japan main eventer. And, you know, I feel like they are gearing up for, you know, Bloodline Civil War in WWE. So, you know, they've signed Jacob Fatu. Like we mentioned, they have Tama Tonga. So why not, you know, bring in Hikuleo and bring in any other Samoan, Tongan person you can to kind of keep that storyline going on forever. So they can do that. And as far as El Phantasmo, I mean, he's super talented. I think he's a guy that could do well in with a main event push, but they've also kind of kept him at a certain level. I mean, he was a guy that we thought could potentially be the leader of Bullet Club, and now they kind of just have him as a guy floating around in Hontai in a tag team. And again, you talked about money, and it's like, well, these foreign guys, the yen is down, and if they want to make money and not have to travel to Japan, I could definitely see both of them seeking offers from WWE or AEW to get big money deals and make more money and then not have to be doing these long travels.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we're not at the negotiation table. We don't have inside scoops. I couldn't tell you what has gone on, but I'm just kind of speculating here. Taking both of these tag team titles off of this team after they had given both sets of titles to them in the beginning of the year, that could be an indication of something, because, they put the titles on them. I don't know if that was an enticement to try and get them to sign and maybe show a bit of good faith from the company. And then as time went on, it seems like they're still not signed. So we've learned our lesson, or hopefully New Japan has learned their lesson, not to put titles on unsigned talent. Oh wait, they did that just now with Jon Moxley. But aside from that, hopefully they've learned that lesson, and I'm guessing that's probably why we've seen these two title changes, in recent succession. And I'm guessing until there is some sort of firm commitment, I don't expect to see them being pushed or utilized in a major way. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah, I agree. So then following that, we had the semi-main event of the evening for the provisional KOPW 2024 championship in the Rural Revitalization in Hamamatsu 2 out of 3 falls match. And we have a new provisional KOPW champion, the Heat Storm, Yuya Uemura. He defeated the Great Okan 16 minutes and 50 seconds. So the first fall, and I guess from what they were saying, I thought this was just going to be a straight up NXT.
Who can get the tires in first?
Right, like an NXT, pre-network, competition, running the tires and stuff like that. But they essentially had a match, but there was cones in the ring, and the first person to get 4 tires on their cone would win the first fall.
Yeah, this was Jeremy, I hate this. like I really, really, really hate these matches. And I do have to wonder if there just is a disconnect between what me, Josh Smith, as a wrestling fan and a Puro head, enjoys about professional wrestling, and then others. And I know pro wrestling runs the whole, there's a spectrum of what pro wrestling is as an art form and everything like that. And I'm not so naive to think it's only Antonio Inoki's vision of strong style pro wrestling. I understand that. I just never thought that we were going to see the day where we were going to have title matches involving tires and lemon rinds and table spots all combined. And the fact that more people voted for this than, granted, I don't know, a shoot style catch wrestling no strikes contest might have been less zany, and it was a close contest in the voting, but fuck, bro, like people want to see this. And even this one was received quite a bit more, the reception to it is a lot better than the reception to the other Rural Revitalization match with Tangaloa. I'm kind of the opposite way, man. I was okay with such a zany stipulation involving Tangaloa because I didn't take the prospects of Tangaloa and Great Okan as being a great match seriously in the first place. So I almost felt like, yeah, go ahead and do a stupid ass match like that. It's going to hide a lot of people's, weaknesses and kind of cover those up. But you got a kid like Uemura who is a stud and a superstar in the making, and you got him doing this, and this is the best we can do as a first time title run. And I know it's easy to play armchair booker, but I don't care what kind of shape the company's in or whatever. Never in a million years would you have me booking guys to be fighting over tires and to eat a full fucking lemon, and that be like the stepping stone to the first singles belt, so that we can and then and I see people online and they're like, this is Uemura's story because he's the first of the Reiwa generation guys to get singles gold and he's proven his worth. And I'm like, no, bro, no, he didn't. because they were fighting on fucking tires and they were eating lemon rinds. This is horrible. And it was so fucking long. And this is just not for me. And when they proposed KOPW in the middle of the pandemic, I really thought that it could hypothetically be something very different and beneficial, because I always thought it would still take place within the confines of the greater booking of New Japan Pro Wrestling, that there wouldn't be embarrassing things happening with it, and it's jumped the shark at this point. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about that, but this is not pro wrestling. This is embarrassing, and it's not something I would want to be watching while other people walked in the room and saw me watching it.
Yeah. And people always ask me, what's the difference between like WWE and New Japan? Like, why do you watch New Japan? Why do you have a New Japan podcast and look at WWE podcast? And then, talk about, the pro wrestling, it's more athletic, hard hitting, it's more sports based, about fighting spirit. And then, you get something like this, and I'm just like, this could be on a, opening second hour of Raw. This could be on SmackDown, this kind of zany, goofy match. And again, I must be also disconnected too. And I know that also this was a vote, and it did seem, I think the Japanese audience kind of really pushed the vote. Because when I looked at the US poll, I feel like it was split, but I feel like Uemura's was winning. But then on the Japanese poll, it was definitely like a very like dominant people voting for Great Okan. And I guess that's they're the core audience. I guess it works for the Japanese audience. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of these rural revitalizations and the KOPW. And I thought KOPW would have been the way for them to kind of do more plunder. Like, all right, we have this kind of title, we can do an actual table match, we can do a ladder match, we can do we can do all these different gimmick matches that we normally don't do because we have this KOPW thing. But now we have this whole thing where they're just picking these out of the box goofy stipulations that aren't really wrestling stipulations. Like, why are we having eating contests in the middle of a 2 out of 3 falls match? And I guess some people, they find it entertaining. They think it's building their personalities. But for me, what built personality in New Japan was the triumph or defeat, or the sorrow in losing.
Yeah. Call me old fashioned, but I like wrestling in my pro wrestling. And I think that this is embarrassing. I really do. And I agree with pretty much everything that you said there. I think that it is a shame, because there was a period of time where guys like Hinare and Taichi and Shingo Takagi in the last couple of years worked really hard to have different kinds of out of the box sort of matches and stipulations that elevated this title and made it something that was somewhat sought after. And since the beginning of this year, it's fallen far from that. And it's been something that I just don't want to watch. And it's a little disappointing, because even though, it's a mid-card thing, and there is some zaniness and goofiness to it, but it should be hypothetically a stepping stone to build guys up to the next level, and something that can draw well on your B shows when you are in these rural areas. And maybe it is. Maybe these last two matches did do somewhat okay, but I think we're splitting hairs there, because in the long term, you've got a greater, wider audience that are watching it online and seeing this, and it's kind of, to me, a black eye on the company. It sucks. And I am surprised. And that's another thing. I am surprised. You go to Cage Match and this is sitting at a 7 something. And, far be it from me to say that the work, and I guess we should just go through the results. We've been tearing the match apart. The work in the match wasn't the worst thing in the world. There was some good work, especially in the quote unquote third fall, but I don't know, man. Like, I don't think that Taiji Ishimori is any better off after having held this recently. I don't think that Taichi is better off after having won it at the end of the year. I don't think that this has done anything for Great Okan coming out of these two matches and these defenses. And hopefully we're turning a corner with Uemura holding it. But I'm not even holding out hope for that, because it's not really, I don't know. I think back to like WWE and those Taboo Tuesdays and when they were like letting people vote, and it became like something that was detrimental because they weren't gimmicking it. And I don't think they're gimmicking these votes, and they're not presenting the best options when it comes to actual matches that you'd want to see as a fan. And people are with the bullshit. And so we have to digest the bullshit, and I'm tired of tippy-toeing around the fact that this is just shit. This is shit. Like, it is. And I think it sucks that a future star like Uemura, a guy that we think has IWGP potential, is in the muck, having this be his first title reign. Like, this feels like the kind of shit they do in WWE, where they like put a title on somebody, but they give them like terrible gimmicks as a rib, to see if they can handle it.
Yeah, I know people are like, you should be happy, Uemura won. And I'm just like, no, I think I would have just preferred Okan to win, because the way this title was treated, even when it was Shingo Hanare Taichi, like, the title was still not seen as this top title. It wasn't really, it's not main eventing big shows. We're here on a Road to show. It's not even the main event of this show. The title's just not treated seriously. It's, even when serious guys have it, it's definitely seen as a lower kind of tier title. And for a guy like Uemura, who's supposed to be one of these, musketeers, pillars, whatever you want to call them, the future of his company, to be, like you mentioned, stuck in the muck with this kind of gimmicky title, especially if we see the trend going forward and he's going to be proposing wacky stipulations, then he's going to be seen as a comedy character. And we've seen in New Japan, when guys get kind of saddled in a lane, it's very hard for them to get out of that. And that's what's happening to somebody like David Finlay, who was a mid-card opening job guy for so long. And when that goofy tag team with Juice Robinson was always kind of seen as this kind of goofy mid-card baby face, and that they flip the switch all of a sudden, and now we're supposed to take him seriously as this dastardly heel. And we see that a lot of times, where these guys that get stuck in that lane, and then, we're going to hit the switch, and it's all different now. And that's what's going to happen with Uemura. If they go down the road and have him do all these comedy stuff, he's going to be seen as a comedy wrestler. And then they're going to be like, now we're ready for him to challenge for the title. Like, who's going to take him seriously when he's doing, eating lemming, throwing tires around, and doing all this KOPW stuff?
Yeah. And, another thing too, and this is just kind of keeping with the kayfabe, he hasn't even won the title. Technically, this is not an official title reign of any sort. He is a provisional KOPW champion. That means that it's temporary unless he holds it to the entirety of the year, and then it resets at the end. The only person that's the real champion is the guy that wins it at the end. So technically, he's not even really a singles champion right now.
Right. It's kind of like the championship scramble thing, where like Brian Kendrick was a WWE champion for that, few minutes. Like,
It's exactly like that. In the kayfabe, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you go to the record
was a provisional WWE champion.
Yeah, you go to the record books, you don't see his name there, and that's what's going to happen with Uemura. You go to the KOPW, if he doesn't hold it by the end of the year, like, nobody's going to remember that he was the provisional champion at the end of April.
Would he want to?
Maybe.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, as far as the actual match, like I mentioned, the first fall, they had cones in the ring, and then they had tires, and they each had to put 4 tires on their cone. So there was a lot of kind of back and forth there until Uemura was able to get 4 cones on his tire, which led to the second fall, which ended up being a lemon eating contest. Well, I guess they only had to eat 1 lemon.
But the entire lemon, including the rinds, which nobody does that.
Yeah. And so, Great Khan's supposed to be like this, I guess part of his gimmick now, he's like this big eater because they did the whole thing with the eel or whatever in the last match. So, they're eating it, and Uemura's having a hard time, and Great Khan's like chomping down, and finally it's a big, huge bite, eats the whole lemon. He wins the second fall. And then that brought to the final fall, which was a table match, and this was probably the best part of the match because a lot of this played around what they were building up, where Uemura is trying to prove that he is as good as a grappler as Okan is. And so through the whole match, he's trying to suplex Okan through a table, and Okan's just out-wrestling him, out-powering him. And then towards the end, there's a table in the corner, and Okan's about to suplex him through it. And then Uemura is able to shift his hips, hits a deadbolt to Okan through the table, and he wins the provisional KOPW match.
17 minutes for the table match, including everything else for the entirety. The whole entire match was close to like 40 minutes with everything combined, which was just like, I would have been perfectly fine with just a 20-minute table match.
Yeah, and because the table match fit the story, like they want to prove who's a better suplex, who can suplex who through a table, like that. I think would have been great. Just do a table match.
Yeah, fuck the rural revitalization.
Yeah, so yeah, he's a provisional champion here, and I guess we'll see what happens moving forward. So then that takes us to the main event of this show. We had a 10-man tag team elimination match. Los Ingobernables de Japón, Bushi, Hiromu, Shingo, Naito, and Yota Tsuji. They defeated the Bullet Club War Dogs team of Clark Connors, Dave Finlay, Drilla Maloney, Gabe Kidd, and Jake Lee. 28 minutes and 42 seconds.
Yeah, I thought that this was one of the better elimination style matches that New Japan, they kind of go to the well with this a little bit too much, in my opinion, these days. And it's sort of, a B show blow off for any time they have factions warring with one another. But that being said, this one had more heat. It was in a bigger arena. We had Jake Lee involved. There was a bit more, excitement because of that. And I thought that they did a better job with this than usual, honestly, even though they kind of went with a lot of the same tropes, double eliminations, guys kind of going out that way. Some of the booking decisions weren't that surprising, but I thought it was overall done pretty well.
Yeah, really fun matchup. So we had Shingo and Gabe Kidd doing a double clothesline spot over the top for double elimination. Then Bushi and Maloney are going at it, and Bushi hits the rewind kick, and he tosses Maloney to the floor. Then Connor spears Bushi, but Bushi gets the Bushi roll on Connors and pins him, so Connors is eliminated. Then Finlay power bombs Bushi over the top rope onto everyone on the floor, so he's eliminated. So now it's 3-2 LIJ. Then Jake Lee grabbed Yota Tsuji's ankle, which allowed Finlay to knock Tsuji off to the floor, so that's 2-2. Then Hiromu does a Hurricane Rana to the Finlay to the floor, so Finlay's out of there. Then Jake Lee hits a big boot that sends Hiromu over the top, and then we're down to Jake Lee and Naito as the final two, and then Naito is able to get Jake Lee to the floor, and LIJ gets the big win. They also had some mascot with them, Slyly, He was out there with them, and so they had the big closing promo. He was celebrating with them as well, and LIJ stands tall as the War Dogs retreat.
Yeah, so real quick, I just looked on Cage Match for Hanzo, and yeah, he worked. I was correct. He did work the 1997 Best of the Super Juniors.
Wow.
Yep.
How he's fallen.
There is a Chris Jericho versus Hanzo Nakajima match from May 19th, 1997. I wonder if that's worth checking out.
So we had a lot of questions here. First from user fecal_soup. Is there a wrestler that has a worse entrance attire and also is a negative charisma magnet compared to Jake Lee? Dude's gear is giving neckbeard incel vibes with the top hat, monocle, and trench coat.
I don't want to speak too much on Jake Lee. I don't watch Noah. I don't know that much about GLG. I've seen some of his, I've really never seen a bad Jake Lee match, but that's because I only cherry pick the best Jake Lee matches that are out there. So, when he's had incredible Champions Carnival matches or, Triple Crown title matches with God, what's wrong with Mia Hara or something like that? I've seen a few of those and I'm like, oh wow, this guy's really incredible. But I'm not the arbiter of, his work, his look, his charisma. I hear things. Obviously, I hear, pretty much what you've said is a widely held Western opinion on the guy, that he kind of tanks when it comes to drawing power and charisma and getting over and everything like that, and is someone who's pretty much from my understanding been given a shot at the top in two of the major companies based mostly off of look and height, and it hasn't worked out to either company's full advantage. That being said, I'm still kind of open because I haven't seen that much of the guy's work to begin with, but I did think that was a funny comment when he's talking about him looking like an incel.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I have not seen a ton of Jake Lee. I mean, a lot of people I respect their opinions who have watched him, they kind of bury him, and there's a lot of hemming and hawing when it comes around him and his name, and when he gets these pushes, and everything I hear is it's not good. It's bad when he gets these big main event pushes and runs and stuff like that. So to me, I was kind of like, all right, here's a Noah guy, and other people were more familiar with him. So yeah, I mean, the look, I think it's fine. I'm not really hating on the monocle or the top hat. And then he was fine in this matchup, but I'm not gonna completely throw him out yet unless we see more of him in New Japan. If he even going to be around long, it's gonna be all just an angle to set up the all together match. We don't know if he's actually going to be around even past that.
I agree.
Their other question says, on a related note, do you think he and Kiyomiya have a good chance of being in the G1 this year? Do you think NJPW will lean a bit more on other domestic companies to fill in the spots for the G1? Personally, I'd love to see Go Shiozaki, but I think he's in a similar boat with Tanahashi. All the wars and great performances are starting to take a roll on their bodies.
A toll. No, yeah. It's tough because based on, we don't know anything, but based on what it looks like, just with the kind of schedule clues, seems like they're going back to the 4-block tournament, which would, how many guys are going to be that? 32 probably.
Well, yeah, was it 4 blocks of 8 last year, or was it 4 blocks of 6?
I think it was 4 blocks of 8 last year.
Okay.
So, I don't know if they're doing another 32-man tournament, is there room for them to have outside inclusions? Sure. New Japan isn't lacking for guys to put into their tournament. It's more like they might be lacking for guys that can draw. At the same time, summertime's a busy schedule for a lot of these other companies, and I don't know how many of them are willing to give up an A+ talent for, or several to go work New Japan's round robin tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if there were outside inclusions, but I'd be a little skeptical to see like multiple from like say Noah or multiple from All Japan or something like that.
Yeah, they'll probably, if at all, send one each and that be it. So, I mean, maybe this is, Jake Lee's, this is how you get him in the G1 with this whole Naito storyline and that he's the representative of Noah. If he's in it, I doubt that they would also bring Kiyomiya as well, because then that's another, also Kiyomiya is their ace, their top star. I think you don't want to lose him, and then also another top faction leader in Jake Lee. Next question here from good-looking bad guy Dr. Lariat. How excited are you for Jake Lee to restore the feeling? And do we need more top hat guys in wrestling?
I'm okay on the top hat, and I don't know. Is he going to restore the feeling? I'd much rather have Nakajima. Like, send him over.
Yeah. He says, now knowing Jake Lee has accomplished his goal of getting in with NJPW, do they crown him as IWGP champion? What do we do with partner feds? And will New Japan keep recruiting from their partners?
Well, I mean, I guess you could say New Japan has recruited from other companies in the past. The two big, or actually, I guess the big examples would be like Kenta, Shingo, and like Taiji Ishimori are probably like the biggest names that you'd probably point to with examples of that. But I don't think they were necessarily partnering with those companies at that current time when those instances went down. New Japan does have a history of putting their world title on big outside names when it's warranted. Obviously right now that's exactly what we're going through with Jon Moxley. I mean, even though he is on the roster and he's worked extensively with New Japan, he's technically an AEW guy. And he's a great example. When you have a big enough star and the opportunity arises, it might make sense from a business perspective to put your main title on an outside guy, but it doesn't happen too often. I can think of a few guys, like, I don't know, the first name that comes to my mind is like Tenryu, or there were some like freelance sort of guys back in the day, like Bob Sapp or like Takayama was champion. So those are sort of examples, but I don't know that there are any. I don't know if me personally, if I think Jake Lee has the perception to be a big enough star or a big enough draw to be the guy that New Japan would entrust with their title. I don't see that.
Yeah, even though he got a good reaction just based off of what I hear from his runs as top guys in other companies, I don't think that New Japan is going to go to that desperate low to try him out as a champion. Again, there are so many guys that New Japan needs to be working on and building up to be IWGP champion. So yeah, I don't think that they're going to put the belt on him. And yeah, the only person that is a domestic star in Japan that I could, and I don't even think that this is realistic, like it's gonna happen, but if I had to say, like, let's throw out a scenario, who's the one guy who's out there that you could see them maybe putting the title on? It's like, maybe if the stars aligned, maybe Kento Miyahara. Just because of the perception and the reputation and everything. And that might be something that could make sense. But even with him being from All Japan, I don't know if that would be perceived as, too low level for them to go that route. I don't know. Yeah. And as far as the recruiting, I don't really think that they're recruiting Jake Lee. We've been seeing them work together with all these promotions. They're getting ready for this All Together show. I think it's probably a way to kind of, promote the All Together show, promote the partnership, and maybe use him here and there. But I don't think that they're trying to poach him from Noah.
I mean, my understanding is he's still GLG at this point.
Right. Yeah. He had the GLG shirt when he attacked Naito on the first appearance. And then, yeah, they did mention he was GLG in this matchup as well. So it's not like he joined the War Dogs. He's not joining New Japan. He's here as a mercenary to try and take out Naito. Next question here from the Discord Daddy. Any sense of what Jake Lee's reception has been with the domestic audience?
No. In the building, he seemed to get good receptions, though.
Yeah, especially the sneak attack on Naito during the Best of 5 series. Like, he got a big pop. There's a lot of oohing and awing of him showing up there. I think he got good reactions in the elimination match. Besides that, I don't know. I don't know if there are, Japanese podcasters that are like, burying Jake Lee on their shows like all the podcasts do here. So yeah, I don't know if the Japanese fan base hates him as much as the Westerners do, but I guess we'll see that as he continues to appear on New Japan. Next question here from Barry Walsh says, is Finley's biggest issue his lack of presence or aura? Does he seem to be almost like a second fiddle in the overall aura department to even Jake Lee?
I think in the context of that match, yes, Jake Lee did seem to come off to me as being presented as a bigger star. But that might not be, I couldn't say that would always be the case. I think they're positioning him for a big match with Naito, and that's sort of where that's coming from. But yeah, I do think that there is an issue with marketability when it comes to David Finlay. Always has been.
Yeah, and you just look at him compared next to Gabe Kidd as they're cutting promos and doing their thing, and yeah, I think Gabe Kidd has definitely a bigger aura than him. So even guys in his own faction kind of stand out more than he does, and again, I think part of that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about him kind of having to work off that comedy goofy mid card babyface stink and be in this big main event role where he's kind of filling the shoes of super top foreign talent. Barry also asked, do you think we're gearing up for another New Japan versus Noah show with Jake Lee coming in for a show and Hayata and Ninja back in Best of Super Juniors?
I don't know. I have to imagine that a lot of this has to do with what's the group called that they're part of?
The United Japan Pro Wrestling. What is it?
Yeah, United Japan. And see, it's confusing because there's also like a all Asia thing as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know which is which, but I'm assuming it's part of that. I don't think that a Noah New Japan Super Show like they've done in the past for Wrestle Kingdom is off the table. But this is a sign of, more working together for sure, certainly.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Wrestling Satsuma no Kuni, which happened today, April 29th in Kagoshima. Show opened up. We had Big Bolton Oleg defeating Katsuya Murashima with the Kamikaze, 5 minutes and 57 seconds. So just another dominant win here for Bolton Oleg. Then
decent action, very little offense from Murashima.
Yeah. Following that, we had Just Five Guys team of Taichi, Taka, and Yuya. They defeated Tanahashi, Tiger Mask, and Togi Makabe. So yeah, not sure what they're working towards building there. Maybe Just Five Guys going to get a potential never 6-man title shot in the future, but win here for Uemura's team, and as he's first show as KOPW provisional KOPW champion. Then following that, we had the TMDK team, Kosei Vegeta, Mikey Nichols, Shane Hayes, and Zack Sabre Jr. They defeated the United Empire team of Callum Newman, Francesco Akira, Great O'Khan, and Jeff Cobb. So again, preview here of the TV title match coming up between Sabre and Cobb, and then some Super Junior preview with Vegeta and Akira. And we have a question here from Les Commission 7252. Is Vegeta still on excursion? I remember Zach saying that he was going on a TMDK type excursion last year after Best of the Super Juniors tournament.
I mean, I don't know for sure that that's the case. I mean, he's back now, but he was doing work in the States. He was doing work in Australia, and he kind of seems to be inhabiting, or has been inhabiting, like a hybrid role where he works dates for New Japan, but he also works dates outside of the company. So I mean, he has sort of had a quasi excursion, but it's less pronounced than say the one that like Oi was on in Noah. I do wonder though, with them bringing him back just recently and putting him in big spots for the junior division and putting him in super juniors, if this is not a more permanent, return to action for the company.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he has, the gear. He's a part of the faction. He did do the kind of mini Australian tour, teaming with Robbie Eagles. He's been doing some U.S. shots. He was here a couple months ago for MLW in Tampa. So he's doing some, every once in a while, doing some dates. But yeah, I feel like he's fully graduated. He was in a number one contender match for the junior title. He's in Super Juniors. So yeah, I think that he's fully graduated. He might do some other tours of Australia or something, but I don't see him going on a prolonged, longer excursion at this point.
I do think the action between Sabre and Cobb in these preview matches have been some of the best highlights of the tour thus far, especially this past week. One thing I didn't mention, I thought was noteworthy. TMDK, they picked up that victory on the last show with a roll-up. And so they got the win over GOD, but it was far from like an emphatic victory.
Right. They didn't hit the Tank Buster or any of the other big, the Thunder Valley. Yeah, it was that roll-up.
So I almost kind of wonder like what that's about. If we're, are we on the road to a TMDK push? They keep still mentioning the greatest tag team that's never won the IWGP, if that's where we're headed. Or are we going to a rematch with them in GOD? Like it's hard to tell with this at this point.
Yeah. So following that, we had House of Torture, Dick Togo, Evil, Ren Narita, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Yujiro Takahashi. They defeated ELP, Hikuleo, Jado, Desperado, and Shota Umino 11 minutes and 4 seconds. So again, kind of building up, trying to build up Narita and Umino for their upcoming title matches. And then we had some Super Junior build there. Got Kanemaru in there, Desperado. So that was that. Then following that, we had the Bullet Club team of Chase, Kenta, and Taiji Ishimori defeating Bishamon and Hanma 9 minutes and 50 seconds. So again, another build for the heavyweight tag team title match. Then we had the LIJ team of Shingo, Naito, and Yota Tsuji. They defeated the War Dogs team of Dave Finley, Gabe Kidd, and Gato. So this is all a build to Tsuji and Gabe Kidd. Coming up at Dontaku. Then the semi-main event of the evening, we had the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title match. The Bullet Club War Dogs of Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney defeat the LIJ team of Bushi and Hiromu Takahashi.
Yeah, for me, probably best match of the night. And I was almost sort of quasi anticipating a title change here, just because, again, it is the junior tag titles, and they do often, historically kind of pass those around, and they didn't head that way this time. But then again, all the same, they are continuing this string of unsuccessful wins and major losses when it comes to the story of Hiromu. And this just kind of plays into that ongoing saga once again.
Yeah, and that was a part of the VTR, the pre-match video. They showed, Bushi and Hiromu failing to win the junior tag team titles in the past. So that was a big part of the story of this matchup. Would they finally, get to win the junior tag titles here? But yeah, they were just not able to overcome the power of the War Dog team of Drilla and Clark Connors. And like you mentioned, continues that losing streak story that Hiromu's been on, going into Super Juniors. Of course, all four of these guys will be in Super Juniors, so we'll see if Hiromu will get a win back over these guys, or is he going to kind of continue in that slump even in the tournament. But yeah, this was a good back and forth matchup here with the War Dogs hitting their full clip on Bushi towards the end and getting the win. So really fun main event here for the War Dogs, and going to be interesting to see who ends up challenging them next. They did tease potentially the Motor City Machine Guns coming in the challenge.
I had almost even wondered if it might have made more sense for Hiromu to eat the loss in this match as opposed to Bushi, but they didn't go that way. But I was wondering, if depending on what the blocks, how those played out, if it would have made sense for Hiromu to take the loss here. But earlier in the night, and we'll discuss them. We did get the A and B block announcements for Super Juniors, and I guess that takes us to the main event here.
Yeah. Before that, we had a question here from Les Commission 7252. Are Dan Maloney and Callum Newman teased for the G1 after Maloney wins against Naito, and Newman being alluded to join the G1, as well as Jake Lee with his small appearance alongside Kiyomiya if it decides to bring him back?
Yeah, I think all of those are plausible possibilities.
Yeah, I think especially with Newman not being in Super Juniors, I think that they'll probably slot him for G1. And like we mentioned with Maloney, like he looked so jacked in there with Naito, so I could definitely see him being in G1 as well. So that takes us to the main event for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. The champion Sho retains and defeats Doki 23 minutes and 48 seconds.
A lot of haha.
Yeah, I mean, shenanigans all up and down this match. It started out with them with the whole contract thing, and Sho grabbed the official contract and shoved it in his mouth, and Rechius had to retrieve it, and then started the match. And so, yeah. And then, of course, you had all the House of Torture shenanigans, Kanemaru coming in, Evil, Yujiro, then you had Just Five Guys coming in, Dick Togo coming in. Pretty much all the, normal House of Torture spots here with them. Pushing there were several ref bumps, Groat choking, all the fun that you have with House of Torture. But it came down to the end where Narita came in with the push-up bar, hits Doki with it, hits the double cross spike, and then Sho gets the 3 count as the ref revives. So,
yeah, I mean, the one positive that I might take out of the way that this was presented, Doki was presented as somebody capable of winning the title. He continuously overcame the odds and came very, very close to winning the belt time and time again all throughout the match, which, it's kind of, I don't know, somewhat, this reminds me of like when Ric Flair would, defend against somebody that was upcoming, and you get behind him and they're not going to win, but they get close over and over and over again. So maybe it's not even necessarily that that's the case. I don't know if they have plans to push him as a world champion or as a junior champion, down the line, but they certainly presented him in that light here. But I don't know, man. Again, like this is a double-edged sword for me, because it's like, on the one hand, we're crying out for New Japan to invest in domestic stars and to push their own guys and to go with the commodities they have that are going to be draws. And they are to some extent, but it's House of Torture. And it's the type of wrestling that I just, as a fan, and hey, if I'm in the wrong, that's fine. Like, I'm not afraid at this point. Like I said it last week where I was like, we definitely always want to be respectful of the fact that it's a product intended for a domestic audience. But at the end of the day, what the fuck do I personally care about that? And it's kind of the same thing with this. Like I do understand that there may be an audience out there for the House of Torture and what they bring to the table. But I am not one of them. And I don't give a fuck about them. Like, I think this sucks. I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing where this has always been an element of New Japan. We know that, but it's so excessive. It's never been like this. It just hasn't. Like, they have never had this level of overbooking, and quite frankly, it's disrespect for the audience, and that's where we're at. Like, I don't know who this is for. I don't know who is in the back making these calls, deciding that this is what's working and this is the direction that the company needs to be going. But I don't know. It's kind of soul crushing to watch this shit not the whole product, but this at the top of the card, knowing what show is capable of. And I don't care how many, intricate storylines and motivations and, character pieces are out there. At the end of the day, putting everything else aside, a bell has to ring, and it's about two dudes in that ring. And you better fucking bring it and entertain. And this is not entertaining, and it's not fun to watch, and it's just soul crushing. It sucks.
Yeah, it stinks thinking, what if we had 2018 show against Doki in this main event? Like, that would have been a great matchup, and this crowd desperately wanted Doki to win. They were behind every near fall. That was one thing. They did have the fans with the near falls. Doki had several near falls over show, and the fans wanted him to win and overcome House of Torture, which I guess is, the quote unquote, the whole thing with them is you want the babyface to overcome all their antics. But again, it's just super obsessive, and then I don't know. After a while, it's like you want to see him overcome them, but then it gets to the point where it's like, all right, it's just too much.
It's so frustrating at this point. Like, I don't know. It's way over the top. And trust me, I'm all for old school heat. I'm all for guys being hated and not being cool heels. I get that. But there's a way to do it to where it's just not completely insulting and fourth wall breaking and so unbelievable that you have to completely suspend every sense of disbelief you have to accept it. And that's where we're at with this. It's Russoism at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they're not even really having a match. It's just people just running in, ref getting bumped, them hitting each other with weapons, pulling people out. Like, it's not even like an actual competition at this point.
I'd rather watch like a 1998 Monday Night Raw. Like, not the good parts, the bad parts. I'd rather watch the bad parts of Attitude Era Wrestling than these House of Torture main event matches. They just, every now and again they'll hit, but it's not worth it to sit through this.
Yeah.
And also, one last thing before we move on. The guy that challenges for the title leading into the big tournament, whether that's Super Juniors or whether that's G1, you always know they're not going to win after that. I'd be very, very shocked. I'm not Chris Sampson. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I really can't even think of a time where somebody challenged for the title, didn't win, and then went into the tournament and like won the tournament. It's highly unlikely that that's going to take place here. So unfortunately for Doki, he's been slotted in that spot and he took the loss here. And, and for a guy like that, for how hardworking and how entertaining he is, to have a main event that just underwhelmed like that, kind of sucks.
Yeah, you think this would be a spot to elevate him? He's been getting over. He beat Hiromu earlier in the year. You'd think you'd want to use this platform to really showcase him, elevate him, especially before a tournament. But yeah, you have this. I mean, we kind of called it. We kind of had a feeling Show was going to win because he is the quote unquote bigger star of the two, and he's going to be the champion going into this tour. So yeah, sucks for Doki, and yeah, hopefully in the future he will win that championship.
Well, that is going to do it for the review portion of the show. But we've got a couple nights of Dontaku and some other big events coming up. So this coming week, Wrestling Dontaku, night 1, May 3rd. I'm going to run down the card and then we can talk about the shining bright lights, maybe a couple predictions here. But Oleg Boltin and Shoma Kato will be taking on Murashima and Togi Makabe. House of Torture Show and Yujiro versus Just Five Guys, Doki and Taka Michinoku. The United Empire's Calum Newman, Akira, and Great Okan versus Just Five Guys, Sonata, Taichi, and Uemura. TMDK's Kosei Fujita, Mikey Nichols, Shane Haste versus the new God, El Fantasma, Hikuleo, and Jado, the entirety of the new God. Bishamon, Hiroki Goto, and Yoshihashi, along with Tiger Mask, take on the Bullet Club's Owens, Kenta, and Ishimori. Sixth match of the night, LIJ's Bushi, Hiromu, Shingo, and Naito take on the War Dogs, Clark Connors, Drill Maloney, Gabe Kidd, and Geto. Seventh match, Desperado, John Moxley, and Shota Umino versus the House of Torture's Evil, Narita, and Kanemaru. Eighth match of the night, the world television titles on the line as the champion Zack Sabre Jr. defends against Jeff Cobb. Ninth match of the night, we have special singles match as David Finlay takes on Yota Tsuji. And then in your main event, we have the global heavyweight title on the line as the champion Nick Nemeth defends against Hiroshi Tanahashi. I know we got some questions there, but before we jump into that, thoughts on the overall card, thoughts on particular matches. What are your predictions, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, the top of the card looks pretty interesting, but there is a ton of filler here with the undercard, a ton of multi-man matches. And this is one of these shows where it's like, I get it. You want to do the 2-night thing. You want to, try and draw people multiple nights. But if you look at the top matches of this card and night 2, like if you put them all on one card, like we'd have a bigger, better show. But I know it's a deal with Dontaku. It's always 2 nights. And but as far as predictions, some on undercard here, I think, when you look at United Empire, it's just 5 guys. We're probably going to have one of those UE guys maybe be the next challenger for Uemura, so maybe Great Okan gets a rematch, or Newman or Akira step up to challenge Yuya. Potentially another strong title match to be built with God and TMDK in the 4th matchup there. The Despy Moxley Umino match, I think you probably need House of Torture to win that match to give Narita some momentum going into the following night's main event. So I can see some shenanigans there. Despy gets hit with a push-up bar, and they win there.
I could see Kanemaru potentially picking up the win there to gain some momentum into Super Juniors.
Yeah, that's possible too. TV title, I mean, I think Zach's going to retain. I mean, you could have Cobb finally beat him, but I don't know. It seems like they don't really want to go with Cobb in any kind of big roles right now. I don't know. I'm just going to go with Sabre.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because almost to the day, we're 1 year out from a match that these two had for this title on this exact event. They had a trio of matches last year, and so we're back to, and they were excellent matches, and it was a great series, but it's like the more things change, the more they're the same, and we're right back to where we were last year. I wouldn't be opposed to Jeff Cobb winning this title. On the one hand, it is a little bit hot potato-y. You just had Zach pick up this win over Matt Riddle in Chicago. But we've also talked about how Zach is a little bit beyond this belt at this point, and how much more could he do with it after having had 16 title defenses, in succession in the first reign. So if he did win here, I wouldn't be too surprised, but I'm kind of hoping that Jeff Cobb does pick up a win, especially with them seemingly not breaking up United Empire for the time being and sort of needing to bolster that group. I do agree. It doesn't seem like they're having any plans to make Jeff Cobb the leader of that group or anything like that, but he probably at this point deserves and needs a big major win like that. And I think it would go a long way if he were to be the one to dethrone Zach here.
Yeah, I guess for me, I was thinking, I don't know. I feel like there needs to be more follow-up with Zach, beating Bryan Danielson and going towards the world title. But I guess he can't really go towards the world title if he is the TV champion. So
that's the catch-22. And that's why it was weird that they even put him in this position from the get-go.
Right. So I guess for whatever reason they couldn't get Riddle back in Japan or what the deal was. So maybe you the quick change off here, have Cobb win the belt so that way you can free Zach up to potentially challenge for the world title or do really well in G1.
Speaking on the undercard, as you mentioned, there's a few title match potential, previews and, some setup matches. But the bottom 6 match, so it's a 10 match card. The bottom 6 are all preview stuff. And you get to that LIJ versus War Dogs match, and you're like, oh, even this one might be something that stands out. But then you realize, you look there and you're like, oh, Gato. so it's certainly for sure. You've got 6, Road 2 style preview matches, and then your top 4 are really the top of the card. Basically, when Jon Moxley shows up in the 6-man tag there. The 2 matches we haven't talked about, Dave Finlay and Yota Tsuji, that's one that is very intriguing. And I think just based on their booking and the treatment of these guys, unfortunately for my fandom, I feel like David Finlay has to pick up the win here.
Yeah, I feel like this is a de facto number 1 contenders match for the world title. Finlay coming back from that illness he had that took him out of New Japan Cup. I think they want to, keep momentum, pick momentum back up with him. So yeah, I mean, personally, I would rather Tsuji win, and then you do Tsuji versus Jon Moxley at Dominion. But I think that Finlay's going to win, and then you do Finlay Moxley at Dominion. There's also a lot of history there between Finlay and Moxley from the whole global title thing at Wrestle Kingdom, and Finlay's whole thing is Tsuji blew it because it would have been Finlay who won the tournament, and he would have beaten Naito, but Tsuji won and lost to Naito. So this could be Finlay kind of proclaiming something to be true and beating Tsuji and then going after the title.
I would love it if Tsuji were to win, and if he did, then he would fit into that motif we talked about where Jon Moxley is working with all these younger Reiwa generation guys, and that would be cool. But because he's had several title shots already this early in his career and has failed, and the most recent one was just back in at Sakura Genesis, it seems highly unlikely that they're going to turn around and put him in that big of a position once again, unless they're putting the title on him, which I don't think they are. And I mean, if they're not, 3 title losses in the course of 1 year, that's not a great start for the guy, even if they are all main events and what have you. So to me, it's with it being Dontaku, early May, Bullet Club's anniversary, it makes a lot of sense for David Finlay to pick up the win here. By hook or crook, he's going to win and then be set up in that title, that line of guys that are all lined up to take on Jon Moxley.
Yeah, Bullet Club things happen at Wrestling Dontaku. I know that they teased somebody coming in, and it was Jake Lee, but who knows? We do see people come back or new Bullet Club members on Dontaku, so maybe we actually do get a legitimately new War Dog to help Finlay beat Tsuji.
And then the main event, Nick Nemeth defending against Hiroshi Tanahashi. And, Jeremy, I got to tell you, regardless of who wins here, I'm not that stoked about this match. I haven't been in love with the work from Nick Nemeth thus far in his post WWE run, and in his specifically either of his 2 major singles matches in New Japan. He's been around far too little for me to really care about him, being involved in New Japan at this point. And then you have a broken down Tanahashi, and there are the rumors out there of the political, stuff that's in a lot of these outsiders' contracts when they were brought in to work with New Japan and everything like that. And I kind of think with Nick Nemeth having just recently won the Mega title and his continuing work with TNA and how much of his schedule is taken up from that, I think that Tanahashi's just going to beat him for the belt, and then he's going to be, kind of in a similar position to like Ali and Matt Riddle and these guys they brought in, that they come in, they do their shot, and then they're pretty much gone. They drop the titles. That's what I think is going to happen here. But I don't have high hopes that the match is going to deliver on any high level.
Yeah, I don't think the match is going to be great. I can see this being like a 3.5, a 20-minute 3.5 match, because like I mentioned, Nemeth, he's just not really acclimated to the New Japan style yet, and I don't know if he ever will. And then, yeah, Tanahashi is broken down. You saw that horrible high fly flow earlier this week, and yeah, he's just not looking good. So, I mean, obviously it's Tanahashi. He is great, and he could probably make us a more ground-based, more grappling style matchup that kind of hides some of his weaknesses. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to be a match of the year contender at all.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. The whole, well, we got some questions here, so I guess we'll get to it. Rambone Slam Pig says, thoughts on the Nemeth and Riddle experiment? Seems like each guy has brought complications and issues. Are the returns worth it? I would argue no.
Yeah, something you mentioned, you said we haven't seen Nemeth, very often. Same with Riddle. These guys have come in, they did these big shows, they won, and then they've kind of been gone on the back burner. And so, yeah, we're not really seeing what these guys can truly do or get them integrated in storylines. Like they win and they're almost forgotten about for several months until they come back. We still don't have another date on Riddle, which is probably a good thing. But I know that Dave said that he does have more dates left on his deal. But yeah, we've heard rumors about these guys' contracts, especially Nemeth. There's rumors that in his contract it says that his first title offense had to be against Tanahashi, which is why the Ishii match was a non-title match, even though he won that match, which would have made sense for that just to be the first offense. He wins and then goes on here to challenge or defend against Tanahashi. But for whatever reason, I guess he's a big, Tanahashi market, really wants his first offense to be against Tanahashi.
Yeah, and keep in mind that's a rumor that's gone around. We're not the first. We're not reporting that as news. It's just something that we've heard and something that has been going around the circles. We're certainly not the first ones to say it. But far be it from us to say for sure that it's certainly the case. I don't know, but this guy, and you brought up Riddle. Riddle's worked more tag matches and US shows and previews and things like that than even Nick Nemeth. Nick Nemeth really, he had the big match with, he's had two. He worked Finlay, he worked Ishii. I wasn't blown away by either match personally, even, and I feel like we might be a little bit of outliers because I have heard positive things, but to me it's just Dolph Ziggler working like Dolph Ziggler in a New Japan ring for the most part. And I just can't picture in my head what a quality 2024 Nick Nemeth Tanahashi match looks like. And yeah, so I do wonder, was it a good idea? And we were critical of the decision for them to put the title on Nick Nemeth in such short order after having gone through all the rigmarole to get that title onto David Finlay, for him to just turn around and drop it to Nick Nemeth the way they did. I don't know. It just seemed like maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze at the end here.
Yeah. For a company that is struggling financially and I know these guys, they can't come cheap to invest money in a guy like Nick Nemeth and Matt Riddle when there are other foreign talents that have left or want to leave because they're not getting paid. Like, why not use that money to keep those guys or to increase the pay of the Japanese talent that you have and invest in them to bring these guys in for these, one-off shots? Like, is Nick Nemeth's name really drawing people to Dontaku? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and we'll see, because at the end of the day, he's in the main event, and they're gonna have to be expected to be the ones to draw that card. We'll see what that attendance looks like, but the numbers won't lie, so we'll see. Discord Daddy says, how problematic will it be when the president of New Japan becomes the lineal AAA mega champion?
So MJ's with you. He thinks that Tanahashi is going to win the belt here. I'm sure AAA is not gonna love that, but I mean,
do you agree, or do you think Nick Smith retains here?
I could see him retaining. I feel like they made such a big deal of this whole Tanahashi being the first defense story. Like, why go through all that just for him to lose the belt?
Shit don't make sense a lot of the time in this company right now. That's my retort.
Yeah. Again, I'm thinking too, like, again, like he beat Finlay, who was the top guy coming out of Wrestle Kingdom, beating Moxley and Ospreay. I just feel like we need to get this title off the ground and running. I don't know.
Isn't it weird that like Finlay hasn't even tried to go back after that title? Like he just lost it clean, and that's that. Like I don't know. It's weird. Next part of his question: if Tana beats Nick Nemeth, will he have to defend the global against Moose?
Yeah, Moose, beat Nemeth at the last TNA pay-per-view. So, yeah, who knows? We've seen Moose before on a U.S. show. Maybe Moose will come in and challenge if Tanahashi wins.
That dude named Menace. Thoughts on Nick Nemeth winning the AAA Mega Championship?
Honestly, I have none. I heard the show was horrible. Heard the main event wasn't that good.
I mean, I think it's interesting given the political nightmare that's kind of involved with that, because technically CMLL is New Japan's partner. They don't have anything to do with AAA, and yet one of their title holders is working for AAA as a freelancer and won their world title and is now coming back to work for New Japan. And that's another reason why I feel strongly like he's probably going to drop the title here. And it's one of those situations like Nick Nemeth, good on him. He's not tied to any or beholden to any one particular company, especially New Japan. It's pretty clear, but it is an interesting little wrinkle because he's the AAA champion.
Yeah, I'll see politically, probably not the best thing, but as far as him winning that title, I'm just kind of like, whatever. So yeah, we'll see if that plays at any part in this matchup here.
Dontaku Night 2, May 4th, pre-show Frontier Zone Tag Team, Jet Way along with Naoki Sakurajima versus Katsuya Murashima and Togi Makabe. Second match, Oleg Bolton and Shoma Kato versus Team DK's Nichols and Haste. Third match of the night, United Empire, Francesco Akira and Great O'Khan versus Just Five Guys, Doki and Uemura. Fourth match, the United Empire's Callum Newman and Jeff Cobb versus TMDK, Fujita and ZSJ. Fifth match of the night, House of Torture, Evil, Show, Kanemaru, and Yujiro versus GOD, along with Desperado and Umino. Sixth match of the night, Tanahashi and Nick Nemeth teaming together against the Just Five Guys team of Sonata and Taichi. Seventh match of the night, LIJ's Bushi, Hiromu, Naito, and Tsuji versus Bullet Club, War Dogs, Clark Connors, Dave Finlay, Drill Maloney, and Gedo. Eighth match of the night, the IWGP Tag Team titles are on the line as Bishamon defends against Chase Owens and Kenta. Semi-main event, the Never Openweight titles on the line as Shingo defends against Gabe Kidd. And then your main event, the IWGP World Heavyweight title is on the line as Jon Moxley defends against Ren Narita.
So it's a very similar thing here. We got a lot of stuff on that undercard. You got like 7 kind of Row 2 style undercard tag team matches here. And then
essentially,
then the top 3 matches are your big stuff here. As far as the undercard, interesting to have Tanahashi and Nemeth teaming up there. I'm assuming Sonata or Taichi will be next in line for the global title. Out of that matchup there, maybe one of those guys pins the champion, or just the guy who doesn't get pinned faces off against the champion. So I think that'll be a title challenge there.
Let me ask you this. In a world where Nick Nemeth was the guy that retained, would you want to see him wrestle Sonata or Taichi? Is that something that, even if you thought it was going to be a quality match, sounds like it would sell well, or that Nick Nemeth would even want to work with one of those guys? Does he even know them?
No idea. I mean, personally, I don't need Nick Nemeth in New Japan at all. But I mean, out of those two, I would prefer Taichi. I think Taichi would get the better match out of him. I feel like a Sonata match could be a total snooze fest.
To me, I think Tanahashi goes into this match as the champion, and you may be right. Sonata or Taichi hypothetically might be somebody that, is the next challenger or whatever. But it is interesting because you've got 4 guys that really, it's difficult to see any one of them. It's very rare. In most New Japan tag team matches, you always see the pin eater, and it's hard to tell who the pin eater is off rip. I mean, you could say Taichi, but even that, it's hard to say. I kind of have an inkling that Tanahashi wins the title. And I'm not going to say like Nick Nemeth is sticking around necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Nemeth turns on Tanahashi and attacks him.
Gotcha. And yeah, this was the same setup they were supposed to do when the last match happened. They were supposed to team together after Nick had beaten David Finlay. So yeah, who knows? Maybe that was going to set up him turning on Tanahashi to set up the title match. So maybe that happens here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure they do a return match, but I don't know. It just seems kind of suspicious, the whole thing. Maybe they win. Maybe they hold each other's hands up and we see Nick Nemeth right off into the sunset. I don't know.
Yeah. Then a tag team title match, just hoping that Bishamon wins. We don't need these things going back to Chase and Kenta.
Yeah, I think this is it for Kenta and Chase Owens, and I'm pretty sure Bishamon retains. So we can be pretty much done with that. I'm a little disappointed we're getting the return match, but it is what it is. Shingo versus Gabe Kidd, though, that's one that's highly interesting, and it's either gonna, expectations are pretty high. It's either gonna really over deliver or kind of under deliver. And I'll be honest, Jeremy, the last time these guys wrestled, I was not as thrilled as many other people. I thought that the match was a little bit schmozzy and kind of lived too much on the outside of the ring for me to consider anything that was truly great. But they've done a really great job building this up. And if I recall, I think Gabe Kidd even attacked Shingo in the backstage comments after the last show. So, or not after the last show, after the last Road to. So this should be, and I don't know if you saw, did you see the comments that he made where he said that he's going to take the Never title and turn it into the most sought after belt in New Japan because the IWGP at this point, it's a joke.
Yeah.
And he's going to make this the A1 title. So I think there's a lot of hype for this one. And I think Shingo's going to retain, but you just never know.
Yeah, my whole thing is like, all right, Gabe lost to Shingo, but you're still doing this match. So I kind of feel like Gabe needs to get the win back here and win the title. Or why just have him lose to Shingo twice? I don't know. Again, you said stuff doesn't make sense.
When did he lose to him last?
New Japan Cup.
Okay. Yeah.
In March.
That's the match that I was talking about that I was a little bit underwhelmed with.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but we've moved past that because he's attacked him, incessantly since then.
Yeah. I'm just saying as far as like win-wise, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like if you're doing this matchup again, I kind of feel like you do the 50-50 booking thing here and Gabe Kidd wins, gets the title, and you give him a little bit of a shine this year.
Yeah, but New Japan doesn't always do that. They oftentimes they'll have a guy who has an insurmountable mountain that's in front of him and somebody that has their number, and it takes them a while and several attempts before they can move past that marker in their career. And to me, I feel like Shingo might be that guy for Gabe Kidd, Yeah.
But also we got to remember it's Dontaku, it's Bull Club weekend. Yep. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Gabe Kidd.
Okay. Perfect. And then last match, John Moxley versus Ren Narita. I think Moxley just has too many challengers in line for him to be realistic that it would be a title change here at all. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people that were clamoring for Will Hobbs to win the title this past Wednesday night, and they were really hoping we were going to get, the Don Callis family versus House of Torture showdown here. It didn't work out that way, unfortunately, for those fans. So we have to live with John Moxley and Ren Narita, but I think Moxley picks up the win here, obviously.
Yeah, I think, there's no doubt in my mind that Moxley is not winning. Of course, he's going to win this, defeat Ren Narita. I'm just hoping that, in the Narita Sabre match, we saw a little bit of the old school Narita for a good portion of that match before the antics. I'm hoping that with it being Moxley, we get that kind of old Narita, kind of more of a slugging, brawling matchup before any of the antics happens.
everything being equal, I think night one, just because the top end looks a little bit more involved and is booked a little bit more top heavy. I think night one looks better than night two personally.
Yeah, I think that final flow of night one will end up being better.
The only thing is you got Nick Nemeth and Tanahashi at the top, and you're like, but then at the same time, I'm not totally stoked for Jon Moxley versus Ren Narita. So,
or Bishop on versus Chase and Kenta.
Exactly. So, and then finally on May the 6th, so next Monday, there's going to be an Abema pay-per-view, the New Japan, Noah, DDT, Dragon Gate, Big Japan, and Stardom all together show for the United Japan Pro Wrestling inauguration and Noto Earthquake benefit event. We have 8 announced matches. First match, Tanahashi, Marufuji, and Sanshiro Takagi, so the 3 presidents of their respective companies, taking on the House of Torturers, Evil, Narita, and Yojiro. Second match, singles action as Kano takes on Kosei Fujita. Third match of the night, Natsupoi and Starlight Kid versus Queen's Quest Azumi and Miyu Hamasaki. Fourth match of the night, Daisuke Sekimoto and Tomohiro Ishii team up to take on Jeff Cobb and Masakita Miya. Big boy match. Fifth match of the night, we got El Desperado, Hayata, Kota Minoura, Mao, and Ninja Mac versus Alpha Wolf, Dragonbane, Hiromu Takahashi, Tetsuya Endo, and Yamato. Sixth match of the night, Kai and Sonata versus Chris Brooks and Zack Sabre Jr. Seventh match of the night, LIJ versus Shingo, or the LIJ team of Shingo, Naito, and Tsuji versus Bullet Club War Dogs, Dave Finlay, Gabe Kidd, and Jake Lee. And then the eighth match of the night, Konosuke Takeshita, Shun Skywalker, and Yuya Uemura versus Keito Kiyomiya, Shota Umino, and Yuki Ueno. I don't know for a fact that I think that it's actually the way I announce it's probably backwards. I'm assuming that we're getting the Presidents versus House of Torture in the main event.
No, this is the official full card order for the show.
Really? So the main event is Takeshita, Shun Skywalker, and Uemura versus Kiyomiya, Umino, and Ueno.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess the whole idea there is kind of booking the future on top, but a little surprised by that.
Yeah, it did seem like they did in the press conference kind of picture the President's match as the main event, but I'm glad that they're going with the kind of future here as the main event. It should be a really fun main event. And it should be a fun show overall. I mean, that Daisuke Sakamoto, Ishii, Cobb, and Kitamiya match should be a lot of fun. Got a Stardom match, Junior Multi-Man. Should be a really good show.
Yeah, and you got LIJ versus War Dogs with Jake Lee. That's something heavy in the kayfabe of New Japan, so that's probably one definitely paying attention to. The junior match, the fifth match of the night, that one's gonna be pretty crazy and probably a good little primer for Best of Super Junior. So, not necessarily something that fully fits into the kayfabe of New Japan, but we'll definitely watch it. We'll talk about it. And we did get the Best of Super Junior blocks this week.
Yeah, so Best of Super Juniors 31. A block, we got El Desperado, Kevin Knight, Bushi, Teton, TJP, Kosei Fujita, Blake Christian, Clark Connors, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Hayata. And then in the B block, we got Kushida, Hiromu Takahashi, Doki, Francisco Akira, Robbie Eagles, Taiji Ishimori, Drilla Maloney, Sho, Dragon Dia, who will be replacing Ryusuke Taguchi, and Ninja Mac.
Yeah, so addition by subtraction. Unfortunately, Taguchi's out of the tournament for the first time since I think 2005 or something like that. Both blocks are pretty stacked. I think just off first glance, the B block is a little more interesting with some of these outside inclusions plus some of the bigger names in that block. And then, I'm not a super know-it-all, but I've heard that like Blake Christian and Hayata are kind of both working grimy gimmicks and maybe not having the type of matches that you would hope to see in a Super Junior. So that's also somewhat a detraction in the A block.
Yeah, and up the schedule a little bit, something we talked about, and we'll break it down more next week, is the fact that show does not have a ton of main events. Despy and Hiromu, it looks like they have majority of the main events in this tournament. So yeah, kind of a weak spot there in the B block, having the champion, and he's not getting a ton of main events. He's not going to be a focal point there. But besides him,
sort of like he's basically CM Punk when he had the WWE title.
Yep. But besides show, yeah, B block looks really good, and there's a lot of interesting prospects there. And they are doing the whole semifinal format again, so the top 2 point getters from each block will face off in a semifinal, and then the winner of that will be in the finals. So we got to think
the top 2 point getters of the block are going to face each other in the same block, or are they doing a 1A versus 2B?
No, I think it's going to be the A1 versus B2, B1 versus A2.
Okay, gotcha. And that always opens up the potential for rematches and things like that in the final.
Yeah, so when we do the preview next week, we'll kind of keep that in mind, because we're going to be advancing 4 instead of just thinking about the top 2, and there's different scenarios there that whole semifinal opens up. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with the lineup here and how the blocks kind of shook out. We did have a question here from friend of the show, Zach Porter. He says, now that Gucci's replacement is set with Dragon Dia, do you expect him to get the Gato treatment and lose all his matches except the 1 or 2 at the beginning? And with the blocks... go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were done with the question.
And he also said, and with the blocks being released, which matches have you potentially wanting to skip them? Examples, Christian Hayata or Sho Ninja Mac.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you like off rip if there's anything on the docket that I'm just like absolutely, skip worthy material. I mean, you always hope that isn't the case when it comes to a Super Juniors, but I keep seeing people saying that Blake Christian versus Hayata is going to suck. Again, these are outsiders. They're not guys I watch every day. So I don't know why that's the case, but I'm guessing we're going to learn very, very soon. I don't know why Sho and Ninja Mac would suck, because I know why the Sho side would suck, but I don't know why that matchup wouldn't jive necessarily. I feel like Ninja Mac's going to flip on this boy.
Yeah. Sho's going to have to try and catch him.
But yeah, as far as Dragon Dia, I mean, he's replacing Taguchi. I didn't expect Taguchi to have a lot of points anyway. So, plus he's from Dragon Gate, and New Japan doesn't have the strongest track record when it comes to utilizing Dragon Gate guys, unless, of course, that's not including when they poach those Dragon Gate guys and then turn them into their own stars like Ricochet.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah. So next week we will do a full breakdown of the Super Juniors tournament. Let's jump into the news here. So at a meeting of New Japan's Pro Wrestling Board of Directors, April 22nd, it was determined that NJPW will fully acquire all stakes in Bushiroad Fight Company Limited, henceforth Bushiroad Fight, due to rename itself Stardom Co. Limited from June 28th from the parent company Bushiroad. With this acquisition, Bushiroad Fight will become a fully owned subsidiary of New Japan Pro Wrestling effective June 28th. The goal of this acquisition is to improve operating and efficiency and reduce redundancies within Bushiroad Sports Unit. Transfer stock date is going to take place on Friday, June 28th. And so basically, whatever was Bushiroad Fight / Stardom is coming under the umbrella of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So they've acquired them. They're all owned by Bushiroad, but technically in the past, New Japan was a different line item and in a different column when it came to the business and management of Bushiroad than Stardom and Bushiroad Fight. And now those two units are coming under the umbrella of Bushiroad, of New Japan. New Japan's going to own them. That's how it's going to reflect on all of their, earnings and quarterlies and everything like that. And they're spinning it like this is a very good thing. I couldn't tell you if that's the case or not, but essentially New Japan owns Bushiroad, or I keep messing up, owns Stardom at this point.
Yeah, I think, some of the positives that they've been pushing is also, like you mentioned, the operating efficiency. So you're going to kind of consolidate some of that office stuff. There's going to be more kind of clarity on the booking. So if you want to use women in New Japan, like, you're not going to have a situation where there's a New Japan show and a Stardom show on the same day. I think there's going to be more kind of communication there. So kind of free up the talent schedule, and also for budgeting purposes, limiting that infrastructure there and kind of tightening things up. That seems to kind of be the biggest wins there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there were, because there are, like you said, if they're reducing redundancies, that basically means they're probably going to lay off a lot of people, most likely, because there will be overlap of production staff and ring support, stuff like that, where both companies have people that do the same thing. We sort of saw something very similar recently with the TKO merger, and with scheduling, it's also going to reduce a lot of, conflicts where you'll see less shows kind of booked on the same day and things like that. So we'll see if this is a benefit moving forward. I just want to point this out there. We are one step closer to what I said was going to happen when the whole Bushiroad Stardom stuff took place, where I was like, it's just a matter of time before Stardom becomes a part of New Japan. And we are very close to that happening. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully Stardom continues to thrive. And I would love if this somehow led to their streaming services being kind of combined in a similar fashion to the way that the Cyberfight agent with what
Wrestling Universe. Yeah, so there's been a lot of people kind of speculating that potentially, Stardom World would become part of New Japan World and open the door for them to do more live streaming. So a lot of their shows aren't live stream on Stardom World. They do a lot of pay-per-views, and then you have to wait a few weeks before it gets uploaded on Stardom World. So yeah, hopefully this opens the door for them to do more, straight up live streaming, and also the possibility of more English commentary, because I know a lot of fans have been wanting more English commentary for Stardom shows. So if you kind of have the English New Japan team kind of covering the Stardom stuff, that could help with that. So yeah, it could potentially be just a bigger exposure for Stardom, and it's probably going to help, New Japan's books too at the end of the day.
Yep. Next news item, Mustafa Ali is returning to New Japan for May's Resurgence event. The current TNA X Division champion announced on Twitter that he will be part of the May 11th pay-per-view in response to a report that came out that his future with the company was in doubt. This came from bodyslam.net. They reported Friday that Ali was set to be part of the annual Best of Super Juniors tournament and go deep into it, but was not planned to win it, which was a point of contention that resulted in him being pulled. They also reported his backstage post-match promo after Windy City Riot, where it rubbed people the wrong way. And NJPW wrestler executive Rocky Romero took to Twitter on Friday to also refute any claims made in the Body Slam story. So, this is kind of an interesting thing, this whole story from bodyslam.net, because the person who wrote the article, Cassie Haynes, I guess he's a reporter for them. I had pointed out on our Twitter that the timeline of some of the stuff that they claimed just didn't make sense. Like, they were saying that Ali was already booked for the tournament, but that some of that things fell apart in Chicago at Windy City Riot on June 12th, which prevented him from being able to be included in the tournament. Part of that was he didn't want to lose, so they basically made it sound like he pulled a Hulk Hogan. That's not going to work for me, brother. Problem with this is the way they reported it. They made it sound like he was a done deal for the tournament, but on June 6th, we'd already gotten the field reported.
I mean, on March 6th.
Oh yeah, I said I don't know what I'm saying. I'm tired. Yeah, on March 6th, we had already gotten the full field for Super Juniors announced, and he wasn't even included in the tournament up to that point whatsoever. So the way he wrote that story initially, saying that everything fell apart in Chicago, when they had already announced that he wasn't going to be in the tournament on March 6th just doesn't jive. And I had pointed this out. A lot of other people had pointed out. And then bodyslam.net edited the article. In fact, like I was online and I saw that there were people that had like used the Wayback Machine, and they showed that they edited this article like 4 times separately, but and they changed the way it was worded so it didn't have those inclusions that I just mentioned. The problem with that is they didn't put a redaction out there. They didn't say like that this is revision, or that we made a mistake or an apology or anything like that. You do have Rocky out here saying, and trust me, Rocky would know better than we do, obviously. He said that nothing that was in that article is true. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's some PR. I don't know. I respect Rocky and anything he has to say. So, I'm inclined to believe him. The one thing I will say, again, when we were talking about earlier in the show that there's been rumors, the idea that there might have been an offer on the table and it wasn't kind of working out because of what they had mentioned, that he didn't want to lose, it does line up with rumors that we heard. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm not saying 100% that like we're refuting it. We heard it, breaking news or anything like that. But I'm just saying it is something we heard, and we weren't alone. There were a lot of other people who'd kind of heard something about this way before this bodyslam.net story broke. Now, I think these guys are probably shoddy journalists. The way they wrote it, it didn't make sense, and it was kind of fucked up, and they revised it a bunch of times, and it seemed very sensationalized. But could there be any legs to the story? My answer is maybe. Again, I'm inclined to believe Rocky. The one thing that I think works against that is, remember when they were saying that the rumor was that Forbidden Door was going to be in New York. It was going to be at Arthur Ashe. And then there was a report from Body Slam, I believe it was Body Slam, that said that it fell apart over money issues. Whatever the specific details are, I don't have them. And then Rocky said, this isn't true. But then lo and behold, the show does get announced, and it's at UBS Arena in Long Island, which to me somewhat jives with the idea that they did plan to have it in New York, and they ended up doing it at a less expensive arena. Now, again, that doesn't prove that they're right and Rocky's lying or anything like that. I do just kind of question, could there be any legs to this story whatsoever? And I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, it was a possibility because, after the Super Junior lineup came out, Yo did get hurt, and there was a question on who was going to replace Yo. So potentially there could have been talks at Windy City Ride of trying to get Ali to be the replacement for Yo, to kind of open up that conversation again. And then Ali being like, I'm doing this undefeated gimmick. I'm X Division champion. I have all these belts. I can't lose a lot. And so maybe there was a discussion then. Right. As things broke down there. And with the whole post-match promo, I think for that promo, I think it makes the company kind of look stupid, because in kayfabe, he's saying, I got excluded. I should be in it. I'm X Division champion. I'm the best junior. I just beat the top junior. And so from a kayfabe perspective, it kind of makes New Japan look dumb, because like, yeah, you brought in this junior superstar. He beat your top star, and you didn't even book him in the tournament. Had he
or invite him,
right? And had he known that he was not going to be in the tournament, I don't feel like he should have cut a promo like that saying I was excluded. More of like, my schedule's too busy, I chose not to be in it. Because then it just makes New Japan look dumb. Like, all right, you have this top star. Why didn't you? And some fans are not going to be as insider to know, like, oh man, they might think, oh, New Japan really didn't invite this guy, and it kind of like, why wouldn't they put him in the tournament?
Yeah, and we talked about this last week, and that was my point of contention with, or maybe it was the week before, but that was my point of contention with the promo he cut, is that it really undercut the company and made it devalued the tournament, the way that he explained it, he's like, I'm better than all of them and I'm not included in it, which is fine, but it's not building up the what they have going on at all. And I don't know, it doesn't help, hypothetically, in my opinion, for them to potentially do more business down the road. Now he is coming back, based on everything. The one thing that is happening, he is coming back in May, on May 11th. I am wondering what he's going to do, who he's going to face, because they did have him face Hiromu, who is a junior. I'm wondering if they're going to continue to use him in a junior capacity, or if they're going to kind of blur those lines a little bit. Because
May 11th is also the first day of Super Juniors. So
exactly.
So all the top junior guys will be in Japan. So maybe there's like a strong US based junior they have him face.
Or they could kind of use him in more of an open weight type of capacity, because, New Japan Strong hasn't always been beholden to those weight limits quite as much as New Japan proper. So we'll see as this continues to build out. But again, with Ali, and I like Ali's work. I'm a fan. I know some people had some complaints about the Daryl shit in that match, but I thought that overall the match was really great. I want to see him return, but he is a guy that is primarily at this point in time a TNA guy, and kind of fits into the same category as the other outsiders that they brought in the beginning of the year, who guy hasn't really been around. He's not ingratiated into the kayfabe of the company. And I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, unless they can find a way to really integrate these guys to some greater degree,
Yeah.
Last bit of news, Dominion, June 9th. Tickets are available worldwide right now. So if you plan to go to that show, yen is down. Definitely consider it. New Japan Resurgence will be available worldwide on NJPW World Pay-Per-View for $19.99. And finally, the Forbidden Door tickets went on sale to the general public last Thursday. And I think they're doing pretty good. Maybe not as good as I thought they were going to do, but pretty good. So
yeah, I think they sold like over 6,000 on the first day, and currently the setup is for I think over 8,000. So,
and that is going to do it for the news.
Yeah, we got some questions here. First, front of the show, Rich Latta says, "What is current Tetsuya Naito's historical American comp?"
That is a really interesting question, and I don't know if I have a good answer readily available. I mean, off the top of my head, we've said in the past that he's Dusty, and I do think that that's a good comparison point to some degree. A guy that is very, very beloved, very, very popular, seen as, the peripheral or the perennial underdog, and like the people's champion, and in some ways bigger than the belt, but always kind of slighted by bigger stars. Another guy that comes to my mind in modern times that might be a close comparison, and it's not, and it's for different reasons. Triple H.
How so?
Someone, well, if we're talking about drawing ability, obviously it's not a 1-for-1 comparison. But when you talk about like the guys that were at New Japan at its pinnacle, namely Tanahashi and Okada, they're probably going to be closer comps to like your Triple H or to like your Stone Cold or your Rock. And I'm sure, Kota Ibushi, maybe he's Undertaker. I don't know, something like that. And then as those guys kind of move on, you're sort of left with Triple H as the one kind of remaining guy that's still around, who had a really successful career, drew a lot, did a lot of main events, but maybe was never the 1A to those guys. He was never number one when those guys were on top. He was always in the mix. He was always talked about. He worked with those guys, but he just wasn't at the same level in terms of the booking as those guys were.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking like late 90s Ric Flair. Like, he's a top star, but he's kind of past his peak at this point. Body's broken down, but he's still kind of getting pushed out in big main events and big angles and in big title matches. But he's past the peak.
My only thing with that is at no point, and this is going to sound fucked up to Naito fans, at no point was Naito ever top guy Flair.
Right, yeah.
You know, like, yeah, Flair was the man in the NWA for a decade plus, and Naito, you know, even if all reports were to be believed, he was the most popular or the biggest draw or, you know, the biggest ticket mover, he never was the top guy in the company.
True, yeah.
Plus, I don't know, Flair, like, what era of Flair are you talking about too? Because Flair had some weird eras there. Like, he, like, there was like the 95, 96 where they like started having him work like Eddie and like Six Pack and stuff. And he was like, he became like a mid-carder for a little bit there. I don't know. And then, I don't know, like real late 90s Flair, like, remember he was like doing the death matches and shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I was kind of trying to go more of the comp of like a star that's kind of past their prime, that still kind of pushes the star in kind of these main event spots sometimes. And obviously they're over, but the body's broken down and they probably shouldn't be as pushed as much as they are.
That could be Triple H, honestly.
Yeah.
The difference though is that Triple H was nowhere near the level of star as his contemporaries, and that wasn't really the case for Naito.
Right.
But in terms of his use, also another thing is Triple H had extremely long, lengthy title reigns, and Naito never really had those either. So it's not quite the same. I don't know if there is a historical American comp. Honestly, I think the closest thing is Dusty, a guy that, you know, one thing I do want to refute. So I listened to One Nation Radio, and they talked about our claim that that Naito is Dusty, and, you know, James Boyd, something he said on the show is, he was like, you know, the difference is Dusty had, and he named a long list of guys that Dusty worked with. And my retort to that is like, nah, that's not really the case, because Dusty was a big enough star to where Dusty drew on top by himself around the country and in Florida without any contemporaries, without the title. He was like basically another world champ. He was an attraction a lot of the time, and was brought in and was able to do big business on his own. And we've seen Naito do big business in New Japan over the past decade with plenty of other guys, even if he, like, yeah, currently it's not, that might not totally be the case, although he is, I mean, he did really well tickets wise this past quarter with his title run. And yeah, he doesn't have Kenny, and he doesn't have Okada, and he doesn't have Ibushi and Tanahashi and all these guys he's worked with in the past, but we've seen him on top with lots of other, working lots of different types of guys over the past decade. It's not like he was just always relying on those individuals.
Right, yeah. Moving on to the next question. Oscar Rooney says, if you were to interview TK as a New Japan podcast, what question would you ask?
That is a really good and tough question. I kind of feel like I know what he would answer to this, but I feel like the question I would ask is, you know, I don't know exactly how I'd phrase it, but that because there's the perception that AEW has basically poached all of New Japan's top stars. I would ask him about that. I'd ask him about the perception that they have turned New Japan into a farm league. Like, how would he respond to that accusation, or to that question?
Yeah. And I think the follow-up question I would ask after that would be, out of the current New Japan stars, who do you see as the top guys? Because I want to know, like, how plugged in is he to the product right now, leading into Forbidden Door? Like, does he see a guy like Yota Tsuji as a star that he's going to put in a highlight match at Forbidden Door? Or is he going to lean more on, like, the Ishis and Tanahashis that, the Western fans are used to for a show like that?
Yeah. I think the way I'd probably ask is, like, over the past few years, quite a few top stars from New Japan have gone to work for you at AEW. There is a perception among the New Japan fan base that this partnership is unbalanced and that New Japan has kind of become a farm league or a talent development for AEW. What would your response to that be?
Yeah.
So, good question though.
Next question from Razor Knee Drop. He says TJP for the G1.
Yeah, I think that they'll probably put TJP in the G1 just because of the story they've been telling. Although it's not 100% lock, because he did say in the backstage comments that he was pushing for Callum Newman to be in the G1. Obviously, you can have multiple guys from the same group, but Cobb's for sure going to be in it. Okan's going to be in it. Callum Newman's likely going to be in it. And then, TJP, if he wants to continue to have success, probably shouldn't be in it because he's not going to win it, but I do think it's a possibility.
Yeah. There's a lot of G1 spots that'll be open this year. Obviously, no Okada, no Ospreay. So there's spots to fill. So, I could see a TJP getting in there if needed be. Next question here from Let's Commission 7252. What is a lost fortune New Japan match or story that was taken away from us that you guys would have loved to see? Mine is Naito versus Hiromu match that was taken away from us by the pandemic in 2020, as well as Ospreay versus Okada for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle Grand Slam in the Tokyo Dome in 2021. The story is New Japan possibly heading into a new direction and a new era towards Wrestle Dynasty in 2020.
Those are great ones. The idea that the Madison Square Garden match was going to be Kenny versus Okada 5. That's something that I'm always like, that would have.
Oh man.
Yeah, I wish that would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah, the Wrestle Dynasty. Yeah, this is Madison Square Garden number 2. Like, also, we were talking about going to that show, and that was going to be a big deal. It seemed like that got pulled away. Moxley versus Sabre U.S. title was about to happen right before the pandemic.
This is a little bit more of a throwback, but the idea that we never got Inoki versus Akira Maeda in a singles match on a major stage for this company is horrendous. It's something that needed and should have happened and would have been one of the biggest matches in the history of Japanese professional wrestling. It never happened, which is kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah. We never got the Kenny Omega Kota Ibushi rematch from the G1.
Yep. That's one where it's like, how did that not happen here? And now, bro, it's never happening.
Yeah.
Like, that's gone. Kota Ibushi's not Kota Ibushi anymore, for better or for worse. And maybe so isn't Kenny. So even if they ever did try to do that match, it's not going to be what it could have been at their zenith. The best version of that match probably happened in DDT.
Yeah. Also, there's the big what if Shibata didn't, get the hematoma after the Okada match. Like, what kind of run would he have been on after that?
Yeah, and part of me too is just like, I mentioned it earlier, but I'm still kind of like, I think it's such a waste, the idea that we didn't get the continuation of Okada working with those young guys after we got that jumbo run in the first part of 2023. It was incredible shit, and I would have loved to see more of that.
Yeah. Last set of questions here from Def Triangle 720. First says, could you see New Japan taking a gamble and have Fujita or Akira win Best of Super Juniors?
Possibly.
Yeah, I would probably say more Vegeta over Akira. Then he says, hypothetically, let's say Hikuleo or ELP leave next. Could you see New Japan being forced to make the G1 20 or 24 participants?
No, they'll always have bodies.
Yeah, I mean, they have tons of guys. I mean, there's a ton of strong guys that haven't been over there yet. I mean, Fred Rosser still hasn't done a Japan tour. There's guys like that you can bring to the G1. Obviously, there's AEW guys. There's Noah guys. Like, just outside promotions. There's their own roster. They have plenty of bodies that they need to fill 32. Next question says, do you think Bad Dude Tito should be in the G1? I think it's baffling the company hasn't utilized Big Teats after his performances last year.
Yeah, I agree, but the yen is down, so.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been getting many New Japan dates. He wasn't even on Windy City Riot, a U.S. show. So clearly there's limited money there for him. But yeah, I would love Bad Dude Tito in the G1, more New Japan. I think he fits the style perfect. Like, take the Nick Nemeth money and the Riddle money and the Ali money and give it to Bad Dude Tito. His next question, do you think New Japan should add title matches to the G1 final? I feel like it would add an extra something that won't feel formulaic from the company when they do the G1 final, where it's just full of multi-man matches in one big match.
I would love that. The problem is how do we get to a point where they're promoting and building those matches ahead of time when the schedule is so G1 centric already? I think there is a way to do it, and that's not a bad idea. It's just not. It's hard to kind of envision them actually doing it.
Yeah, I feel like it would have to be like a junior title match, junior tag titles, maybe even potentially even KOPW. You can have somebody win a G1 kind of thing. Yeah, but it's hard to promote a big title match. You don't want to blow a big title match that you can't promote in such a short window of time. Next question, who would you have in the forefront for the build to Forbidden Door 3?
I don't know, because I don't know what they're going to do. It's a tough one. My knee-jerk reaction is Naito.
That's a good one. I would say Zack Sabre Jr. I would personally, like, if Mox retains at Dominion, I would do Mox versus Sabre for the title at Forbidden Door 3. And his last question, what is it about tag team wrestling in Japan that is not seen as an importance?
Well, I wouldn't say that that's the case, but New Japan in particular has never really truly been a tag team centric territory. Some companies are, some companies aren't. New Japan just isn't,
Yeah. And I don't know, clearly that's just not been Gato's focus or the company's whole, the whole history of the company. Also, they've always had tag leagues and they've brought in like big super tag teams, but outside of that, it's not like they've had just a big run of straight up tag teams that have been drawing money.
I mean, they have at different times, but all the same, like, there's just always been more emphasis on singles wrestling in New Japan, as opposed to, like, you look at All Japan's history and there have been whole swaths of time where the tag team title was maybe as important as the world title in some respects. So, and that's just never really been the case with New Japan. And it's probably not going to change anytime soon because Gato's still booking.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the questions. Let's wrap up here with recommended match of the week. Last week, you recommended our good friend Robbie Eagles versus Satukman from PWA.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't seen this, it's part of PWA Black Label's Ringmasters event. It's available for free on YouTube, and it's well worth your time to check out that show. But this match in particular was extremely well built and very heated leading into the match. And I expected it to be good because I'd heard some good things, but I was really blown away. The work itself was high level, no doubt. But if you had transplanted this match to like just your average random independent crowd in the US, I don't think it really resonates with me the same way it did here. This PWA crowd was so bought into this match in particular. And, part of the story here is that Robbie Eagles has never won the soul of PWA title. It's like the one crowning achievement that's kind of eluded him in his career. And as we all know, Robbie helps out quite a bit in the independent scene there in Australia and is one of the like coaches and teachers at the school there. And they mentioned how, like, in the story, the Tuckman is one of his students. So there's definitely like a master versus teacher, student versus teacher sort of element here. And this guy Tuckman, I've never seen him wrestle before, but he has like a party guy, mullet and very much like a gimmick that would definitely get over. And the crowd just loved him so much so that they were booing Eagles. And I guess Eagles has started to unveil like a new sort of heel persona in PWA. And I thought this match just rocked. These guys had the crowd eating out of the palm of their hands. There's one point where I thought Tuckman was a little bit green. There were clearly some like greenish kind of holes in his game, but even in the midst of me saying that, there were times where he'd make a mistake, but he would follow it up with the improvisation that fit into the like stream of what he had been doing. And he never lost the crowd. And I was like, oh, like that's real. Like some of the stuff he did was really good. And Robbie was just incredible. What kind of separates this match from like last week, we reviewed Eagles versus Kushida. And that was just like a very, very solid, really high level kind of exhibition of what pro wrestling is. And it was fine. Like the people were not that invested and it was good. It was great work, but it just happened in a vacuum. This match had story, it had heat, it had hate. The crowd was into it on a major level. And then it had a really, really crazy, super satisfying finish where Eagles just started kicking the fuck out of Tuckman's head to the point where the referee just had to stop the fight. So it was very, very violent. I loved it. I thought the match was, to me, I thought this was a very good contender for Excursion Match of the Year contender, and it's a high recommendation. And I think that if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it.
Yeah, I thought this was a awesome matchup. Yeah, that crowd was very electric, chanting, Robbie's a wanker. They were giving all a chance to Robbie, and they were really behind the Tuckman. Like you mentioned, he had the hat with the two beer things on the end. He tried to give Robbie a beer at the beginning of the match. Robbie wasn't about that life. And yeah, at the beginning of the match, Tuckman was out wrestling Robbie and kind of getting the better of him. And then Robbie kind of turned things around with that big, that cannonball tope he does. And then he started working over the leg of Tuckman, which led to a great near fall where Tuckman hits his big springboard cutter. Because of the knee being hurt, he wasn't able to make the cover in time, so he only got two there. And, he ate it later with a 450 that Robbie was able to take advantage of. And, towards the end there, like you mentioned, it looked like he was going for the Ron Miller again, but he didn't go all the way over. And he was just kicking Tuckman in the face, and then he did that running kind of flash kick, and then the referee just called it off. Tuckman was knocked out, and crowds booing, and Robbie finally wins the Soul of PWA championship.
Yeah, and it feels like there was a story kind of there. I'm not one of these video journalists or essayists who can completely break it down. But, I feel like there's something along the lines of like Tuckman was looking to have a sporting contest with Robbie Eagles, and Eagles, he didn't cheat, but he crossed a line where this wasn't just a sporting contest. It was personal and kind of taught the young buck a lesson. And I feel like the next time that they wrestle, and I feel like there needs to be a return match, the Tuckman is going to have learned from that lesson and really bring a more hate-filled strategy to the match So, I mean, I feel like this could even be like the beginnings of a trilogy. It was really good and something, again, if you guys haven't seen it, go out of your way and watch it. We do these excursion match of the week, reviews. They're usually like, they're cool, they're fine, but like I thought that this was something special. Now, I'm not going to say it was a match of the year contender. Oh my God, like blow away. You need to see it. But if you want to see something different and you want to be entertained and you want to be invested in a short period of time, even if you didn't even know the characters, I felt like that's what this accomplished.
Yeah, really good. Definitely recommend watching that. We tweeted out the link to it. The full show is up for free on YouTube. Check out that match and the whole show.
Now on to the match that you recommended, Jeremy, which was the IWGP World Heavyweight title defense, as the champion Jon Moxley defended his title for the first time live this past Wednesday from Daly's place in Jacksonville. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make my way out there to get on the ground for this one, but I'm pretty glad I saved the gas because this match was not matching. Now, unfortunately, before we get into the critiques, it does appear that Will Hobbs did injure his knee on one of the final moves of the night, was hobbling, and they had to go home early with the match. They had more stuff planned, and as much as I've been critical of the booking of the match, you never want to see somebody get hurt, and so it's not something where I'm happy that Will Hobbs got hurt or anything like that. Far from it. I think he's a really great talent and someone that I see a lot of potential in. But that being said, Jeremy, even before the injury occurred, I did not think this match was jiving. For whatever reason, it just was not happening. And currently, as of the time of this recording, it is sitting as the lowest rated IWGP World Heavyweight title match on record to date.
Yeah, I think part of the problem was there just wasn't a lot of heat for that match. They were in dailies. I had about 2,500 people there, and by the time we got to that match, like I feel that people kind of knew that Moxley was winning. There's no way that Hobbs was going to win, and so there just wasn't a ton of heat for it. And like you were saying, the match wasn't matching. They were doing fine stuff, but it wasn't like the crowd wasn't super into it. They didn't really do anything crazy, and then Hobbs, goes down with the knee injury, and then they have to go home early. So who knows? Maybe they had an awesome, crazy closing stretch planned.
No. Remember that time where Mox worked that empty arena match with
Jake Hager,
and people were like, "Oh my God, you're gonna be blown away!" And I was like, "This kind of sucked." Like that match, this was like a mini microcosm of that match where I was like, I think there's a certain type of body type and style of wrestler that Mox might just not work well with, to be honest with you. And I feel like Jake Hager and Will Hobbs are kind of in that same archetype.
Yeah.
So
yeah, unfortunately he gets hurt. They had to go to the finish quick. Mox chokes him out and retains the title. So obviously not going to be one for the excursion match of the year list, and an unfortunate happening here for the first defense.
Yep. And then I do not have a recommended match of the week. This next week, I'm a little tired, so I'm going to just, we'll take it easy. We'll just do one. I know you got one for us, Jeremy.
Yes, so they just uploaded the Julia versus Stephanie Verkeer strong women's title match, where Stephanie won the title from Julia. So that's up on New Japan World. I figured let's watch that. We do have a Joshi of the Year category and a Joshi match of the year, so I figured we should watch that and get our thoughts, ratings, and opinions out on that match.
You know what, Jeremy? I said I didn't have one, but you know what? Mayu Iwatani just had what is considered one of the best Joshi matches of the year against one Sari for the IWGP Women's title. So fuck it. I knew I was tired, but I'm just throw it on there anyways. April 27th, 2024, Stardom All-Star Grand Queendom. We're going to review Mayu versus Sari.
All right, let's do it.
So all Joshi all the time, keeping it strong style.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap things up here for us this week. Next week, we'll be back to review Wrestling Dontaku and preview Best of the Super Juniors. So if you enjoyed today's show, please consider making a donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure to connect with us on social media. On X, we are at KI Strong Style. You can follow me at Jeremy L. Donovan and follow the network at Social Suplex. On Facebook, we are facebook.com/Social Suplex. Also find us in the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group. On Reddit, I am the Pro Black Guy. Y'all just keeping it strong style. On YouTube, we are at Social Suplex, and you can join our Social Suplex Discord server to interact with us and other wrestling fans. You can email me, Jeremy, at socialsuplex.com, and check out all the other shows that we have here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. All Things Elite with Floyd Johnson Jr. and Austin Tomowitz. Imps WWE Adventure with The Implications, Matthew Mayer. Wrestling Art with Chris Things. Tunnel Talk with Ali, Ann, and Leah. And the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review, and we will catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
And I will be doing a guest spot tomorrow evening on Wrestling Art with Chris Things, so be sure to check that out when it drops later this week. Ichiban.
Thank you for listening to Keeping It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.